From laughingstock to final boss, flipping Sukuna's reputation. In 10 seconds, Ryomen Sukuna once got hard diffed by episode 2 Gojo, sealed into a random high schooler, and then spent like 50 chapters getting ratioed by Yuji's sheer willpower. This is the same King of Curses who was stuck in Finger-Bearer era side quests, losing screen time to Mahito and getting memed as Discount Demon King while Gojo was being glazed as the GOAT every other panel. People were literally calling him a scam boss. But the thing that you need to understand is that all of that was just the tutorial. Because the second Shibuya hits, Sukuna speedruns his entire reputation. One tantrum, and he casually erases a city block, folds Jogo, who was hyped as near 10-finger level, and starts one-shotting special grades like they're cursed energy practice dummies. The point is, that goofy laugh from early JJK, it turns into the laugh of someone who knows he's already solved the game. And then we get Mahoraga. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out when it comes to Sukuna is that he doesn't just beat Mahoraga, he studies it. He lets the wheel adapt, watches what exactly happens, and then reverse engineers a counter that he later uses to kill Gojo. That's not just strength, that's a walking patch notes exploit. He literally learns how to break unlimited void off-screen. By the time we reach Shinjuku, this is not the guy Gojo clowned in episode 2. This is the final boss who's dismantling domains back-to-back, spamming barrierless malevolent shrine, auto-adjusting cleave to your durability so you can't even tank, and casually popping reverse curse technique like it's a stim pack. He bodies the strongest sorcerer in history in a straight-up fight and still has enough gas to keep going. That's when fans stopped joking and started coping. So the thing is, Sukuna isn't just strong, he's unfair. His kit is built to ignore rules. His IQ lets him abuse every interaction, and his adaptation means that even broken characters like Gojo, Yuta, and Hikari start to look like tech demos he's already watched. You think infinite spins, Hikari, domain spamming Yuta, or peak Maki with Toji stats are going to just run him over. There's also definitely at least the possibility that every one of those win conditions falls apart the second Sukuna understands them. Which brings us to the actual controversy. If we take everything we know from the manga, every feat, every rule interaction, every matchup, does anyone in this verse have a real, repeatable win condition on Sukuna? Or are we all just theory crafting ways to lose slower? For the sake of the video, I'm going to give you a little bit more detail than just Gojo maybe wins high diff. We're going to run through Gojo, Yuta, Yuki, Hikari, Maki, full coalitions with prep time, and then throw in the wildest card of all. What if Yuji had fully awakened back in Shibuya? If Shinjuku-level Yuji, with shrine and soul hacks, showed up the moment Sukuna went on his rampage, would the King of Curses' reign have ended before it even began? That's exactly why the title of this video is, Could Anyone Have Beaten Sukuna? Setting the stage. Which Sukuna are we actually talking about? So before we start throwing Gojo, Yuta, Hikari, Maki, and awakened Yuji at this guy, like it's some giant raid boss, the first thing that we're going to need to figure out is, which Sukuna are we actually fighting? Because the thing that you need to understand is that Sukuna is not one static power level. It's basically 4 different monsters wearing the same face. You've got Heian Sukuna, the legend, the boogeyman, the guy the entire sorcerer world is still traumatized by 1,000 years later. But that version is almost completely vibes. We hear he bodied the golden age. He was the GOAT even back then, but we don't actually see his full kit. We don't know his finger count. We don't see what exactly happens in real time. It's all hype, no concrete feats, so trying to power scale that directly is kind of fake math. Then you've got early finger Sukuna, like 1 to 8 fingers. This is the guy who pops out to clap finger bearers, flex on special grade curses, and casually terrorize Yuji's soul. He's obviously terrifying compared to early series sorcerers, but he's still in that limited screen time, limited information zone. We know he's way above Jogo's pay grade by the time he's around 10 to 15 fingers. So these early versions are more like a preview trailer than the actual movie. Where things start to matter for our question is Shibuya Sukuna, around 15 fingers, the one who deletes Shibuya, styles on Jogo, and then goes into that insane Mahoraga fight. This is where we see Malevolent Shrine fully. We see Cleave auto-adjusting to durability and cursed energy, and we see him literally learning in real time from Mahoraga's adaptation. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on that later, because that fight is the blueprint for endgame Sukuna's brain. But the point is, by the final arc, we're not just dealing with 15-finger Sukuna in Yuji's body anymore. We're dealing with full-power Sukuna in Megumi's body, with 10 Shadows hacks, Mahoraga knowledge, reverse curse technique, domain restoration, and experience against pretty much every broken ability in the series. This is the version that fights Gojo, tanks unlimited void strats that should be unwinnable, and then still has enough gas to run through the coalition afterward. So when you ask, could anyone beat Sukuna, you can't just leave it vague. Are we talking early game Sukuna that Nanami would still get bodied by, Shibuya Sukuna who's experimenting with Mahoraga, or the final arc Sukuna who's literally seen it all? For the sake of the video, our main target is that last one, endgame, fully informed Sukuna. Because if someone can beat that, every weaker version is automatically on the table. That said, we're still going to reference Shibuya Sukuna a lot, especially for the Yuji Awakening What If, because that's the last realistic branch in the timeline where the story could have changed. If Shinjuku-level Yuji shows up there, does the system of JJK ever actually have an answer to the King of Curses? Or was this whole world rigged from day one? That's exactly why the title of this video is what it is, and next we're going to start stress testing that system piece by piece. And the rules of the game. How we're judging can X beat Sukuna. So before we start throwing Gojo, Yuta, Hikari, your grandma and her domain expansion at Sukuna, we need to actually lock in the rules of this little stress test, right? Because the thing that you need to understand is that could anyone beat Sukuna is a very different question from could anyone high diff him once in a blue moon with anime luck cranked to 11? The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is baseline conditions. We're talking standard JJK battlefield, modern city, decent amount of structures, no weird terrain buffs unless they're part of the character's kit. Both sides are bloodlusted, so nobody is role-playing a moral debate mid-fight, but they're still using their canon intelligence, their actual habits, their real decision-making at that point in time. No retroactive brain upgrades, no what if Nanami suddenly played like Gojo. If Hikari hasn't seen Malevolent Shrine yet, he's not pre-dodging it like he's watched the anime. And that ties into what we even mean by can X beat Sukuna. We're not glazing him so hard that we pretend he's literally untouchable. but we're also not counting a 1% miracle black flash as proof of a matchup. The point is, could beat means there's a consistent, reproducible win condition. If you have to land 4 back-to-back black flashes, crit his soul, and pray he forgets he has reverse curse technique, that's not a real answer, that's fanfiction. A one-off upset is cool, but we're looking for scenarios where, if you ran this fight 10 times, the other side actually wins a meaningful chunk of them. Now, for the sake of the video, I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on knowledge, because this is where a lot of ex-Solo's Sukuna takes go off the rails. We're going to look at everything through 2 lenses. Lens 1 is canon knowledge. What does this character or team reasonably know at the moment they'd clash with Sukuna in the story? So Gojo in Shibuya hasn't seen the Mahoraga adaptation tech Sukuna learns later. Yuji in early Shibuya doesn't know about cleave auto-adjusting to durability, that kind of thing. Lens 2 is a theoretical perfect prep scenario. Everybody walks in with full awareness of his kit, his feats, malevolent shrine's radius, his reverse curse technique, the Mahoraga-derived unlimited void counter, all of it. When it comes to actually weighing matchups, we're going to break it down into 4 big buckets. Raw stats, speed, power, durability, how you stack against 20-finger Sukuna casually bisecting city blocks. Hacks, domains, innate techniques, reverse curse technique, stuff like immortality loops or Mahoraga-style adaptation. Resource loops. Do you have infinite CE like Hikari, busted healing like RCT spam, or some way to outlast him when he's literally carving buildings for fun? Then tactical IQ and adaptation. Can you actually process what exactly happens when cleave auto-scales, when malevolent shrine hits the field, when he starts optimizing around your technique? So structure-wise, here's how we're going to play it. First, we break down Sukuna's kit and why he's so oppressive that the entire JJK system kind of bends around him. Then we start throwing individual contenders at him. Gojo, Yuta, Yuki, Hikari, Maki, Kenjaku, all the goats and all the frauds. After that, we look at coalition scenarios, the everyone dogpile the king of curses angle. And then, finally, we circle back to the wild card, a fully awakened Yuji in Shibuya as a potential hard counter. Because if that version of Yuji actually exists in that moment, what happens to the so-called unbeatable king might not be as straightforward as you think. Why Sukuna is built different. The kit that breaks the system. So before we start throwing coalitions at him and asking if Yuji can body the king in his own era, we need to be honest about one thing. Sukuna is not just strong Gojo. The thing that you need to understand is that his entire kit is basically a built-in exploit of JJK's combat system. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is why you can't just out-tank him. That's cleave and dismantle. On paper they're just slashes, right? But cleave auto-scales. It literally reads your durability and your cursed energy and then adjusts its output to cut you anyway. So all the usual JJK answers of just be tough, just stack CE reinforcement, just be Jogo with 99 defense don't actually work. If you pour more energy into defense, cleave just cranks itself up. It's like fighting a boss that always hits for 60% of your HP no matter what build you run. And dismantle is the same philosophy, different target. That's his generic anything in the area slash. Buildings, Shikigami, your support squad that thought they were safe in the backline all get shredded. When it comes to battlefield control, he doesn't even have to think about it. the kit just cleans the screen for him. Now, plug that into Malevolent Shrine. This is where it gets stupid. Most domains are, I trap you in my barrier. My rules win. Sukuna goes, what if I just delete the barrier? His domain is a fixed radius, guaranteed slashes over time, and you don't even have to be fully inside for it to start cooking you. That means he can sit in Shinjuku, pop Shrine, and the city just starts getting Julianed while he focuses on the real threat. You can't simple domain your way out of the chip damage forever. You can't outrun the radius if you're already in it, and he doesn't need to win a barrier clash to start winning the fight. And even when you do tag him, he's built to come back. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here because people really undersell this. Sukuna's reverse curse technique isn't just heal the cut. He's repairing his brain mid-fight, rebooting his own processing, and then on top of that, he has domain restoration. Most sorcerers throw out one domain clash, get their brains fried, and they're basically a civilian for the rest of the battle. Sukuna takes that same exchange and goes, cool warm-up, patches himself, and is ready for Shrine Round 2. All of that would already be disgusting, but the point is, he's also a nerd about it. Look at Mahoraga in Shibuya. That whole fight is him labbing. He's watching how the wheel adapts, testing how much damage he needs, figuring out what exactly happens when something learns an ability like Unlimited Void. There's also definitely at least the possibility that he could have ended that faster, but he wanted the data. That directly feeds into Gojo. He walks into that fight already knowing what an adaptation to Unlimited Void looks like, how long he can survive in a domain war, how his own restoration interacts with repeated clashes. He's not just spamming Shrine, he's optimizing patterns, baiting out hollow purple, timing heals so he never actually falls off. And this is where Sukuna gets really unfair. Every single fight is permanent patch notes for him. Shibuya gives him Mahoraga data. Gojo gives him the absolute ceiling on barrier battles. Yuji gives him hands-on experience with soul mechanics. So any late-game opponent isn't fighting raw Heian Sukuna. They're fighting a fully informed meta player who has literally seen the best tech in the verse and already theory-crafted counters. So when we start asking, could Gojo, Yuta, Yuki, Hikari, Maki, Kenjaku, or the whole Avengers lineup beat him if they all jumped him at once? We're not just asking about power levels. We're asking if anyone can beat a guy whose base kit breaks the rules and who learns faster than the story can throw new rules at him. And for the sake of the video, that's exactly why the title of this video is what it is. We actually have to build some nightmare scenarios to even make it close. Scaling the King, Heian Myth, Shibuya Massacre, and Gojo's Fall. So if we're going to build these nightmare scenarios, the first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what version of Sukuna we're even talking about, because Heian Sukuna, Shibuya Sukuna, and Gojo Killer Sukuna are literally three different characters wearing the same face. Back in the Heian Era, this dude is pure myth. 4 arms, 2 faces, the original raid boss. Every sorcerer of that golden age either feared him, died to him, or had to sign up for a full Avengers level coalition just to barely seal him, and even that cost them everything. The thing that you need to understand is that Heian is hyped as peak sorcery, not the washed modern era. And even in that context, Sukuna is treated like an outlier among outliers. That's where the expectation gets planted that even if you drop a prime Gojo back there, he's probably not soloing the king. But we don't really feel that in the story until Shibuya. Early on, Finger Sukuna is kind of a gremlin, bullying Yuji, flexing on a finger bearer, showing scary output, but still playing. Shibuya Sukuna is the first time Gege actually cashes the check from that Heian hype. He casually erases a city block, bodies Jogo while complimenting him, and then runs a live-fire experiment on Mahoraga in the middle of a populated area. No effort, no morality, just let's see what exactly happens if I do this. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on that Mahoraga fight because that's the real turning point. Most characters treat Mahoraga like a death sentence. Sukuna treats it like a lab rat. He tests cleave and dismantle on something that literally adapts to concepts. He plays with domain timing, figures out how the wheel procs, and learns that if you overwhelm the adaptation with a new rule set fast enough, you can delete the threat before it ever fully adjusts. There's also definitely at least a possibility that without this fight, Sukuna never gets the exact blueprint he needs for Gojo's unlimited void. Jump to Shinjuku. Endgame Sukuna vs Gojo is basically the final exam of everything he stole from Heian, refined in Shibuya. They trade domains, they trade hollow purples, they both get their brains scrambled and repaired with reverse curse technique, and Sukuna is constantly referencing that Mahoraga data. He uses the Shikigami's adaptation not as a crutch but as a reference manual. How to survive inside unlimited void, how to chip Gojo down, how to force domain trades where his barrierless shrine slowly wins the war of attrition. When he finally lands the kill, it's not just raw power, it's accumulated system knowledge. So when we ask, could anyone beat Sukuna? The point is we're talking about this fully evolved monster, not the half-awake finger goblin from the detention center. And for the sake of the video, that's exactly why the title of this video is framing it around the absolute worst-case Sukuna, because anything less is low-key glazing the rest of the cast. And the crazy part? Even that might not be his real ceiling once we start factoring in Yuji and Megumi's potential, which is where things get way more interesting. The Gojo. Question: if the strongest lost, does anyone else even matter? And once you start talking about ceilings, we kind of have to address the big, awkward question in the room. If Gojo, the GOAT, the walking infinity himself got packed up, does anyone else even matter? For like 3 years straight, the thing that you need to understand is that the fandom power scale was literally just a two-man ladder. It was Gojo versus Sukuna at the top, and then way down here you had Yuta, Jogo, Mahito, your favorites, all basically treated as side characters in that debate. So when Gojo finally loses in Shinjuku, a lot of people instantly jump to, okay, cool, discussion's over, Sukuna clears the verse, pack it up. But the point is, that's not actually what that fight showed us. What Gojo really proved is that Sukuna is not some untouchable concept monster. He can be dragged to his absolute limit. We watch Sukuna get forced into Mahoraga-based counters, burn through domain after domain, risk eating a purple trade that would have bodied literally anyone else in the setting. He's healing. He's adapting. He's making those risky, almost desperate plays. That's not a casual stomp, that's a death match. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out, though, is what exactly happens if you stop treating Gojo's kit as the universal win condition. Because on paper, infinity, unlimited void, and purple sound like the perfect anti-anyone loadout, right? But against Sukuna specifically, Gojo's whole game plan revolves around domain warfare and high-risk trades. That plays directly into an opponent whose entire thing is adaptation and rules abuse. Sukuna literally used Mahoraga as a tutorial mode for countering unlimited void. He let the wheel spin, learned the interaction, and then walked into the rematch with a hard-coded answer ready to go. Every time Gojo throws out a domain, Sukuna gets more data. Every time he commits to a purple, Sukuna can decide whether it's worth mirroring the trade because he knows he's got reverse curse technique and a second life bar to lean on. So no, Gojo losing doesn't automatically mean Yuta or Hikari or Yuji are just worse options. It might actually mean the opposite. They don't need to be stronger than Gojo on a raw stat check to have better matchups. Yuta's copy can potentially pull out weird off-meta techniques that Sukuna hasn't fully labbed out yet. Hikari's infinite jackpot loop ignores the just kill them in one exchange win con that Sukuna used on literally everyone else. Yuji's soul-based counters attack the one layer Sukuna can't just brute force with cleave. And I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on all of that when we break down those individual matchups, but for the sake of the video, park this idea. Gojo's loss didn't close the door, it just raised the entry fee. The real question isn't, could anyone beat Sukuna? It's, who actually dodges his game plan entirely? Because once we go back into that Gojo fight frame by frame and start swapping him out for Yuta, Hikari, or a fully awakened Yuji in the exact same situations, there's also definitely at least the possibility that some of those scenarios don't end the way you think they do. Matchup Logic 101. Why stronger isn't the same as can beat Sukuna. So before we start swapping Gojo out for Yuta or Hikari like it's a gacha reroll, the thing that you need to understand is that stronger than and can beat Sukuna are two completely different questions. Power scaling is just who wins in a neutral arena, no prep, no weird rules. Matchup theory is, does this specific toolkit actually answer what this specific boss is doing before you get bodied? The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is how Sukuna breaks those usual rules. Because on paper, yeah, Gojo and Sukuna are in the same tier, maybe you even put Gojo slightly above in raw hacks. But when it comes to matchups, Sukuna isn't just a stat check, he's a systems check. Cleave auto-adjusts to your durability and cursed energy, so you can't just be tanky. Malevolent Shrine is barrierless, so you can't just lol domain clash and walk away. And he has reverse curse technique on deck, so trading damage is a bad deal, unless you can actually delete his soul or his technique. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on that, because this is where a lot of X greater than Gojo, so X greater than Sukuna arguments fall apart. Imagine someone weaker than Gojo, but with some cracked soul hacks or anti-domain tech. On a tier list they sit lower, obviously, but if they can directly interact with Sukuna's soul the way Yuji does, or shut off his domain the way simple domains and anti-domain barriers work, that character might actually have a better win condition than a generic bruiser who just punches really hard and dies in shrine. And the thing is, Sukuna's kit is literally built to invalidate basic win conditions. Out-tank him, cleave scales up, out-DPS him, he's got better range, better AoE and better CE efficiency. Beat him in a clean domain clash? He already learned from Mahoraga and Gojo how to break and rebuild domains mid-fight. You're not surprising the guy who watched Unlimited Void, adapted, and then used that data to cook the goat of modern Jujutsu. So we have to start talking about hard counters and soft counters. A hard counter is someone whose win condition directly attacks Sukuna's one real blind spot: his soul, his technique structure, or the rules of his domain. A soft counter is someone who doesn't auto-win, but forces Sukuna into awkward lines. Yuji's soul interaction is a soft counter that can become a hard one if his output gets high enough. Yuta's copy flexibility can fish for the exact tech he needs mid-fight. Hikari's immortality loop doesn't outstat Sukuna forever, but it absolutely buys enough time to look for a kill angle. Pattern interrupt real quick. If we just lined everyone up and yelled who's strongest, Sukuna probably still walks out smiling. That's exactly why the title of this video is about who could beat him, not who scales to him. So, for the sake of the video, we're not glazing him and calling it a day. We're asking who actually has a realistic game plan that Sukuna can't fully solve before dying. And once we apply that lens to Gojo, to Yuta, to Hikari, to a fully awakened Yuji, what exactly happens to those matchups starts to look way less obvious than the tier lists make it seem. Yuji, the supposed nobody, how the MC was secretly built as Sukuna's natural enemy. And the crazy thing is, once you start looking at those matchups that way, you realize the one person the story keeps shoving back in our face is the supposed nobody. Yuji, the guy who gets bodied by Choso, emotionally cooked by Sukuna, and benched by the higher-ups all in like one bad week. On paper, he's the punching bag MC. We meet him as athletic freak, zero jujutsu talent, right? He's literally introduced as this track and field monster who can yeet a shot put like a cursed cannonball, but when it comes to actual technique, he's just throwing hands. No inherited technique, no special clan, no I have a secret six eyes. And the thing that you need to understand is that this is exactly how Gege hides what Yuji actually is. Because his growth feels grounded, every step is he trained, he black flashed, cool, so we don't clock that. Narratively, he's being built as Sukuna's natural predator. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is why his body even works as Sukuna's cage. Anybody else eats one finger, they die. Yuji eats 15 in Shibuya and is still arguing with the tenant like it's a bad roommate. He resists possession on day one, he can tag out with Sukuna and then yank control back. And later the series starts quietly telling us his soul and cursed energy are weirdly good at touching other souls. That's not normal protagonist plot armor. That's a specific counter to a guy whose entire kit is soul-based slashing and domain hacks. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here, because people sleep on how hard Gege telegraphs this. Yuji's enhanced physical stats keep scaling with more fingers, but unlike Sukuna, he never gets a flashy technique early. Instead, he gets black flash consistency. He gets these panels where his hits reach the soul, and by Shinjuku we're talking about implied innate stuff like soul-splitting punches, shrine-style slashes, maybe even a built-in answer to Cleave's auto-adjustment. Sukuna dominates by perfectly reading your cursed energy and body and then cutting your soul. Yuji is literally the guy whose CE ignores that gap and just walks straight into your soul anyway. And thematically, the point is hammered every arc. Yuji has to take responsibility. For Junpei, for Shibuya, for every person Sukuna massacres while wearing his face. Gojo, Yuta, Hikari, they talk about duty, but Yuji's whole character is, I'm the one who has to end him because I let him in. That's not just guilt, that's narrative assignment. So here's where the what if gets wild. If that latent anti-Sukuna kit had fully awakened in Shibuya before Sukuna farms Mahoraga, before he studies Gojo, before he optimizes Cleave and Malevolent Shrine, does the entire series flip? There's also definitely at least the possibility that the King of Curses era never even starts. But if we drop Shinjuku Yuji into Shibuya, what exactly happens fight by fight? Defining awakened Yuji, what does peak potential actually look like? So before we start throwing this Shibuya Yuji at Jogo, Dagon, Mahoraga, and eventually Sukuna, we need to actually lock in what we mean. When I say awakened Yuji, I'm not talking about some random fanfic where he's soloing the verse with 6 domains and a lightsaber. The thing that you need to understand is that this version of Yuji is built straight from canon crumbs. We're taking his insane soul resistance from literally day one against Sukuna, his late series physical feats where he's trading with Shinjuku monsters, and the really obvious direction of his technique that Gege keeps hinting at. We're just compressing that growth and saying, okay, what if this clicked earlier? So what exactly happens when that clicks? The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is his black flash consistency. By Shinjuku, Yuji is basically treating black flash like other people treat jabs. He's proccing it under insane pressure, back to back, while reading Sukuna level speed. For the sake of the video, awakened Yuji is someone who can reliably enter that mental state in real fights, not just once every 100 punches when the plot feels bad for him. If you give that to a guy who already has top-tier physicality, stupid durability, and the best close combat instincts in the series, his damage output doesn't just go up a little, it spikes. Every clean hit is potentially a black flash, which is a 2.5 times cursed energy multiplier, on top of a body that was already chunking Hanami, and later making Sukuna actually respect his punches. You're not tanking that for long, even if you're a special grade. Now I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on the technique side, because this is where he becomes an anti-Sukuna specialist instead of just strong guy number 3. The soul stuff is already seeded. Mahito's explanation, Yuji's ability to hit the soul, Yuki's research, all of that. A plausible innate technique for awakened Yuji is basically soul impact. When he connects, his cursed energy prioritizes the target's soul structure first and the body second. What does that mean in practice? 1. His punches partially bypass conventional durability, because he's not just cracking armor, he's rattling the pilot inside the mech. 2. He can destabilize or outright disrupt curse techniques that are anchored to the soul, which is exactly what Mahito was abusing and what Sukuna weaponizes with his possession and adaptation. 3. There's also definitely at least the possibility that repeated hits start to desync soul and body, making regeneration and reverse curse technique way less efficient. But the point is, this doesn't magically make him Gojo tier. He's not dropping barrierless domains the size of cities or rewriting the rules of space. Awakened Yuji is a scalpel, not a nuke. He's a hard counter in one lane, close range, soul targeting, black flash machine designed to bully things that rely on soul mechanics, regeneration, and curse technique stability. And that's exactly why the title of this video is about whether anyone could beat Sukuna. Because once you define Yuji like that, some matchups get way more interesting than people think. Triggering the awakening. Why Black Flash is the key switch for Yuji. So if Yuji is a scalpel and not a nuke, the next question is, what flips the switch from talented brawler to soul-splitting surgeon in Shibuya? And the thing that you need to understand is that Gege already gave us the perfect trigger in the story. Black Flash. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on what Black Flash actually is, because it's not just punch but harder. Mechanically, it's a literal space-time distortion that happens when your cursed energy and your physical hit line up within 0.0000001 seconds. You get a 2.5 times power spike, your perception of cursed energy stretches out, and for that instant, you're basically seeing the system in HD. That's why people who land it talk about the world feeling different, not just the impact being stronger. But the thing is, Black Flash is way more about mindset than mechanics. You can't just grind it like a combo in a fighting game. It needs this weird mix of rage, focus, and flow state. Nanami explains it perfectly. You don't aim for Black Flash, you fight so well that Black Flash starts happening. And when it does, it drags your understanding of cursed energy up with it. That lines up exactly with Yuji's Shibuya headspace, where he's literally breaking down from guilt, grief, and anger every 5 minutes. Now, the first thing that we're going to need to figure out is, why would a chain of Black Flashes be the awakening trigger for our what-if Yuji? Because the second you let him hit multiple in a row under that Shibuya level stress, you're basically stress testing his soul and technique potential at the same time. Every Black Flash is forcing his cursed energy to sync perfectly with his intent, his emotions, and his body. You run that back to back in a life or death situation. There's also definitely at least the possibility that it just cracks something open way earlier than in canon. We actually saw the prototype of this back in the Kyoto Goodwill arc. Under Nanami's mentorship, Yuji hits that first Black Flash, then chains them, and Nanami literally frames it as stepping through a door into a different level of sorcery. He even admits that keeping a streak going is easier once you've done it, because your brain and your cursed energy remember what it feels like. Shibuya is just that idea dialed up to 11. Same door, way higher stakes. So for the sake of the video, we're going to hard-code a rule. In this what if, there is one specific Shibuya fight where Yuji finally hits that insane Black Flash chain and fully awakens. Innate technique online, soul mastery unlocked, the whole Shinjuku kit. But we don't magically rewrite every external event around him right away. Same chaos, same enemies, same Sukuna lurking. Just a different Yuji standing in the middle of it. The real fun is, which fight is that? And what exactly happens to Shibuya once that switch flips? Choosing the fork in the timeline. Where in Shibuya should Yuji break through? So if we're flipping that Shinjuku switch somewhere in Shibuya, the first thing that we're going to need to figure out is, where does that actually make sense? Because Yuji gets emotionally bodied like 3 times in one night. Choso in the bathroom, Nanami's death, Sukuna's rampage, and then the Mojito gauntlet. Any one of these could be the fork in the timeline. Let's start with the bathroom, because obviously that's the meme pick. Yuji getting folded by Choso next to a urinal and then awakening into the goat would be crazy, but the thing that you need to understand is Yuji's mindset here is all over the place. He's confused about the fake memories, he's outmatched by blood manipulation, and he's literally just trying not to die. High pain, low clarity. That's great for trauma, terrible for a controlled Shinjuku-level awakening where your intent, technique, and soul are all in sync. Then you've got post-Nanami. This is the emotional low of Yuji's entire life. He watches Nanami walk off like a burnt salaryman Jesus, gets one last, "You've got it from here," and then boom, Mojito deletes him in front of Yuji's eyes. But the point is, Yuji's headspace here is pure self-hate. He's not thinking, I have to surpass my limits. He's thinking, I shouldn't have been born. That's blackout guilt, not black flash focus. You don't awaken your inner Sukuna killer while you're literally begging the universe to drop a building on you. What about witnessing Sukuna's rampage? This one's tricky because narratively it's massive. Yuji wakes up, sees the crater, realizes all those bodies are on him. That's responsibility, terror, and hatred of Sukuna all spiking at once. But again, he's in shock. He can't even process what exactly happens. He's not lining up cursed energy vectors. He's dissociating. Awakening here would kind of cheapen how long it takes him to crawl back from that mental break. Now Mahito, this is where everything lines up. By the time Yuji is really squaring up with Mahito in Shibuya, his hatred is laser-focused, his responsibility is accepted, and his resolve is crystallized. He literally calls himself a cog in the Jujutsu machine. For the sake of the video, that's exactly the emotional script you want right before a full power-up. His intent is, I will kill Mahito, not, I want to disappear. That alignment of will, technique, potential, and soul is exactly what Shinjuku Yuji embodies. And pattern interrupt real quick. If Yuji doesn't awaken here, when does he ever? After this, Mahito's gone. Sukuna's in full Demon King mode and the training window closes. So yeah, there's also definitely at least the possibility of the other scenes working. But when it comes to narrative weight and mechanical payoff, the Mahito fight is the perfect fork in the timeline. Which means our next step is asking, if Shinjuku Yuji wakes up mid-Mahito, how many pieces of Shibuya fall over instantly? Mindset. Under fire. Why Yuji's Mahito? Resolve unlocks peak potential. So if Mahito is the perfect fork in the timeline, the thing that you need to understand is why Yuji's brain during that fight is basically the perfect ritual circle for an awakening. We're not just talking he's mad his friend died, we're talking a full-on psychological domain expansion where every panel of his internal monologue is sharpening his cursed energy. Look at what exactly happens in Yuji's head once Mahito kills Nanami. Yuji doesn't go, I'll save everyone. He literally goes, I'm gonna keep killing you, and you're gonna keep hurting me, and I'll bear that. That's insane. He's accepting, in real time, that he will keep piling bodies on his conscience and keep getting his own soul shredded. And instead of collapsing like early series Yuji after the Sukuna finger bath, he just decides someone has to take responsibility and that someone is him. And this is where Gojo's earlier comments come back in a really scary way. Gojo was always glazing him like, yeah, he's a normal kid, but his potential is nuts, right? The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what normal even means in JJK. Yuji is the most average dude thrown into the least average situation. Sukuna's vessel, human punching bag for the system, watching people die because he wasn't strong enough. That pressure cooker is exactly what forges the version of Yuji who can look Mahito in the eyes and say, I'm your executioner, instead of, I want to save everyone. Now, when it comes to Black Flash and innate techniques, the series is very clear. You don't hit that level by accident. You need that one frame, unwavering intent. No hesitation, no what-ifs. Against Mahito, Yuji's intent is crystal. Erase this thing. Not win the fight, not protect my ideals. Literally delete the embodiment of his trauma from reality. Mahito is his survivor's guilt, his fear of Sukuna, his failure with Junpei, all wrapped into one smug little gremlin. Focusing all of that into one desire gives Black Flash a perfect target and gives a soul-based technique a perfect blueprint. JJK as a world rewards that kind of ugly clarity. The point is, the series keeps telling us, if you can't look at the cruelty of sorcery and keep walking, you get bodied. Nanami accepts dying in a hallway. Maki accepts burning her whole clan. Gojo accepts being the strongest and the loneliest. Yuji finally steps into that same lane here. For the sake of the video, this is the exact moment where embracing the blood on his hands stops being a fear and starts being a choice. So you mix rage at Mahito, responsibility for every death, and acceptance that he'll be a killer moving forward, and you get the perfect cocktail for a breakthrough. That's why an awakening here doesn't feel like a random shonen power spike. It feels mechanically earned. And if Shinjuku level Yuji is born out of that mindset instead of months later, well, that's where Mahito stops being the final exam and turns into the tutorial boss, which is going to completely change how the rest of Shibuya plays out. Black Flash as a doorway. From lucky crit to permanent power-up. So let's turn Black Flash from a one-time crit into a literal character reset. Because the thing that you need to understand is that Nanami already told us it's not just a lucky punch. Once you've experienced Black Flash, your understanding of cursed energy is permanently elevated. Your ratio, your timing, your sense of flow. It never goes back to pre-Black Flash scrub level, even if you can't spam it on command. Nanami describes that post-Black Flash state like being in a zone where cursed energy is always right there, right under your skin. The point is, he's basically saying, your ceiling just got raised forever. So if one Black Flash does that for a salaryman who still gets bodied by Mahito's domain, what exactly happens if Yuji chains them together in the most high-stress situation of his life? That's where this goes from cool moment to forced awakening. Now, under Mahito-level stress, Yuji is not just mad, he is soul-deep violated, right? Junpei, Nanami, Nobara, Mahito has touched every nerve. For the sake of the video, I'm going to give you a little bit more detail. Imagine that final Shibuya chase, but instead of just 2 Black Flashes, Yuji hits 3, 4, maybe even 5 in rapid succession. Every impact is him aligning his cursed energy to the exact shape of his intent, and more importantly, to the exact shape of his soul. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what that does internally. Each Black Flash is a micro-epiphany. Yuji's body has always been goated, sprinting like a track star, tanking hits from Hanami, trading blows with Choso. But his soul compatibility is the real cheat code. Repeated Black Flashes are like syncing your controller to the console. His physical instincts and his soul finally stop desyncing. Punch, soul, cursed energy output, all snapping into one rhythm. And once that sync hits, there's also definitely at least the possibility that his innate technique gets dragged out of hiding. In canon, we see the groundwork, soul awareness, that weird comfort with Sukuna's presence, later on the soul-splitting punches and shrine-style slashes. But it's all delayed, fragmented, spread across Yuki's research, Sukuna exposure, and Shinjuku trauma. Our what if is basically saying, what if Mahito compresses that whole journey into one night? So instead of Yuji walking out of Shibuya as the guy who landed some nasty hits but still doesn't have a named move, he walks out as a fully awakened sorcerer. Soul-centric kit online, Black Flash not just a miracle, but a reproducible state, maybe not on command, but close enough that Mahito becomes the tutorial boss for his entire fighting style. He's not glazing Mahito with rage anymore. He's using him as a training dummy. And if that version of Yuji exists right after Shibuya, with his soul and body perfectly synced and an actual technique crystallized, then when we drop him into the rest of the incident, Sukuna's whole script starts to wobble in a really scary way. And the next matchup is where you really see how bad it gets. Yes, we're cheating a little. Bending canon for maximum chaos. So before we start acting like Yuji is about to speedrun Shibuya and put Sukuna on a t-shirt, we need to be honest about how hard we're cheating here. The thing that you need to understand is, canon Yuji does not awaken like this in Shibuya. Geigi very clearly drip feeds his growth. He spaces out the black flashes, the soul talk, the technique hints, all to keep Yuji as the struggling underdog instead of a walking Sukuna counter right away. Could Yuji have gone crazy earlier off pure stress and potential? Maybe. But did Gege write it that way? Absolutely not. Yuji gets bodied by Choso, mentally cooked by Sukuna, and spiritually shredded by Mahito all in the same arc, and he's still just fists and fundamentals. No innate technique, no shrine, no soul splitting, no I understand cursed energy on Gojo's level monologue. He's raw, he's terrifyingly promising, but he's not that guy yet. So why are we bending it? Because all the ingredients are literally sitting there in Shibuya. You've got Yuji's repeated black flashes, which already crack open that door to higher cursed energy understanding. You've got the insane emotional stress, the guilt, the rage, the I'm the one who let Sukuna out spiral. You've got his freaky soul compatibility with Sukuna and Mahito straight up explaining souls to him while Yuji is punching his face in. For the sake of the video, we're just accelerating the payoff that Gege clearly wanted to save for later. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on the exact rule we're locking in, because this is the foundation for everything that comes next. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is, when exactly does this switch flip? Our answer is right after the Mahito confrontation in Shibuya. In this what if, that's the moment Yuji's soul-focused innate technique crystallizes, and his understanding of cursed energy basically jumps to near Gojo tier in terms of control, efficiency, and reading other people's cursed energy and souls. Pattern interrupt. Does that mean Yuji is suddenly as strong as Gojo? No. Calm down. He's not one-shotting Malevolent Shrine or casually tanking Cleave. What it means is that his brain is operating at that level of cursed energy literacy, even if his raw stats and hacks pool are still Yuji-flavored. He knows what he's doing now. He's not just swing and believe. Now, what doesn't change is just as important. Sukuna still has the same finger count he canonically has in Shibuya. Nanami, Nobara, Naobito, Dagon, Jogo. All their fates up to that point stay exactly the same. Kenjaku's moves don't suddenly get patched. The general flow of the Shibuya incident, the chaos, the domains, the deaths, remains intact on the macro level. We're not rewriting the whole arc. We're just flipping Yuji's internal power state from talented brawler to fully awakened problem. From here on, we treat that awakened Yuji as a real piece on the board. No more, well, he wouldn't know that yet, excuses. The question now is brutally simple. If this Yuji exists in Shibuya, does that finally give anyone, Gojo, the coalition, or Yuji himself, a real shot at actually beating Sukuna? That's exactly why the title of this video is what it is. And the next section is where we start stress testing that idea against Sukuna's actual kit. Awakened Yuji's loadout, Soul Strikes, Black Flash Spam, and Monster Physique. So now that we've basically spawned Shinjuku Yuji in the middle of Shibuya, the first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what exactly happens when this version of Yuji actually throws hands. Because if we're going to compare him to Sukuna, or even put him in the same sentence as people like Gojo and Yuta, we can't just be glazing him off vibes. Physically, this Yuji is a monster. Late series Yuji is trading blows with Sukuna-possessed Megumi, reacting to malevolent shrine-level pressure, and still weaving in black flashes. Scale that backward into Shibuya, and you've got a dude who is literally sprinting through special grades like they're traffic cones. His speed lets him stay in Jogo's face, even with volcanic AoE going off. His strength is ragdolling things that used to body him, and his durability is stupid. He's eating cleave tier slashes and still pressing forward. The thing that you need to understand is that even before hacks, he's a close combat terror for anyone who can't hard control distance. But then you add the soul stuff and it gets actually disrespectful. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here because people downplay how broken this is. Yuji's awakened punches aren't just meathead swings, they're interacting with the target's soul directly. That means when he tags you, he's not only damaging your body, he's shaking the core that your curse technique is sitting on. Against someone like Choso, that's blood control getting scrambled mid-cast. Against a Dagon or a Jogo, that's their CE output stuttering, their durability calc getting messed up, and a portion of their defenses being bypassed because your soul doesn't care about armor. Now combine that with Black Flash Spam. We've seen that once Yuji is in that awakened flow state, he can chain Black Flashes in extended exchanges, not just one lucky proc. Every clean hit has a real shot at being a 2.5 times nuke layered on top of a soul strike. So when it comes to Shibuya, that means Choso isn't just losing a fistfight. He's getting his soul critted 3 times in a row, and suddenly his eye-bodied Yuji in the bathroom agenda is gone. Dagon's Fish and Shikigami, they get deleted the moment Yuji actually connects. On top of all that, his cursed energy control is way tighter. He's reinforcing specific joints, conserving CE so he doesn't gas out, and most importantly, reading opponent's CE flows mid-fight. He can literally feel when a domain is coming, when a big technique is being primed, and adjust his angle or timing to slip inside the startup. The point is, he's not just stronger, he's smarter with his CE. So where does that put him on the tier list? He's not Gojo, he's not Sukuna, he doesn't have infinite or barrierless domain nonsense. But for the sake of the video, we can comfortably say he's sitting in that Yuta/Hikari pocket. A specialized high tier who, because of soul hits and Black Flash consistency, has a very specific anti-Sukuna niche. And that niche is exactly what we're going to stress test when we start lining him up against Sukuna's actual win conditions in the next part. Could awakened Yuji have stopped Shibuya Sukuna's rampage? So now that we've parked Yuji in that Yuta/Hikari pocket with the ultra-specific anti-Sukuna niche, we have to answer the nasty question. What actually happens if that version of Yuji wakes up in Shibuya, not Shinjuku, and Sukuna takes the wheel? The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is just reconstructing Canon Sukuna in Shibuya. Because the thing that you need to understand is that this wasn't just a massacre, it was a training montage disguised as a war crime. Sukuna grabs control off the finger spike, casually deletes city blocks with cleave and dismantle that auto-scale to durability, bodies Jogo while low-key glazing his own potential, and then uses Mahoraga like a lab rat to test malevolent shrine angles, adaptation timing, and how far he can push barrierless domain pressure. In the real story, Yuji is basically a passenger. He wakes up, sees the crater, breaks down, and the rampage is already done. But for the sake of the video, imagine awakened Yuji regains control way earlier, with soul-based strikes, black flash consistency, shrine, and a simple domain. And he's not just crying in the rubble, he's actively hunting Sukuna. He knows, if I let this guy cook, the whole city and Gojo's win condition are gone. So what exactly happens when they collide? Can Yuji actually hurt the King of Curses from the inside? The thing is, Sukuna is already the goat of soul manipulation. He's been living in Yuji's body, rewriting flesh, hard countering techniques that touch the soul. But Yuji's whole gimmick now is that his punches don't care about durability scaling, they go straight for the soul layer. There's also definitely at least the possibility that repeated internal soul hits start making possession less stable, even if they can't outright eject Sukuna. Picture Sukuna trying to pop Malevolent Shrine over Shibuya and Yuji firing off black flashes from inside the same body, forcing micro-lapses in control. Maybe Sukuna has to dump cursed energy into reinforcing the vessel instead of maxing out his slashes. Maybe he can't casually toy with Jogo because every time he relaxes, Yuji spikes him with another soul punch and simple domain ping, turning their shared body into a contested domain of its own. Does that save everyone? Obviously not. Yuji doesn't magically solve the hostage bombs, the veil logistics, or the chaos Kenjaku already set up. The point is that his presence changes the fight, not the entire disaster. Fewer blocks get erased. Maybe Jogo escapes without being used as a prop. Maybe Mahoraga never gets its full adaptation script written because Sukuna can't afford the long test anymore. And that's where it gets crazy for later. If Sukuna doesn't get that free Mahoraga research run, he walks into Gojo with way less data on unlimited void. No perfect counter, no comfy, I've seen this movie before confidence. So the real question becomes, in that altered timeline, does Gojo finally get to be the uncontested GOAT? Or does Sukuna find a brand new, even more disgusting way to win? Future echoes. How a Shibuya awakening warps the entire power curve. So now we're in this cursed little forked timeline where Sukuna doesn't get his comfy Mahoraga test run. Gojo walks in way scarier, and you might think, cool, end of story, Gojo just bodies him. Roll credits, right? But the thing that you need to understand is that Shibuya awakened Yuji doesn't just fix one fight. He warps the entire power curve of the series from that point on. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is Sukuna's reaction. Sukuna is not dumb, he's petty. The second Yuji shows Shinjuku-level hands in Shibuya, Sukuna's risk calculus changes. In canon, he can kinda treat Yuji like a backup battery and a fun toy. Here, Yuji is a legitimate anti-Sukuna weapon walking around in his own body. So instead of casually waiting for Megumi and cooking up the 10 Shadows plan, Sukuna probably prioritizes one of two things way earlier. Either completely suppressing Yuji's consciousness, or eliminating him the first time Yuji gets cornered. That means a way more aggressive possession attempt the next time Yuji is near death, or Sukuna literally engineering those near-death situations on purpose. But if Yuji survives that, his growth curve goes insane. Starting Shibuya at a Shinjuku baseline means every finger, every fight, every near-death isn't building him from promising first year. It's stacking on top of an already top-tier chassis. By the time we get to the final arc, you're not talking about Yuji who might reach special grade someday. You're talking about a guy who's probably sitting comfortably in that Gojo/Yuta conversation. Shrine refined, simple domain mastered, soul-splitting punches optimized, and way more reps against high-level opponents. You also can't at all quantify how disgusting his Black Flash consistency gets when his floor is already that high, and this feeds straight into Gojo's strategy. If Gojo knows from Shibuya onward that Yuji is a real consistent Sukuna counter, he doesn't game plan like a solo raid boss. He game plans like a raid leader. For the sake of the video, imagine Gojo going into the final battle assuming two win conditions. Either he kills Sukuna himself, or he cripples Sukuna, forces him into a weakened state, and then Yuji's soul hacking finishes the job. That changes when he risks unlimited void, how reckless he is about trading damage, and who he demands be protected at all costs. Yuji goes from kid I believe in to piece I literally cannot let die. Kenjaku and the rest of the villains feel that too. An awakened Yuji in Shibuya isn't just emotionally dangerous, he's strategically dangerous. Kenjaku's whole long game is built around using Yuji as a vessel and a trigger. If that vessel suddenly starts punching souls and resisting possession on a technical level, Kenjaku has to reroute the entire script. Target priorities shift. Instead of just sealing Gojo and farming chaos, they're actively trying to isolate and delete Yuji before his kit hard counters Sukuna's late-game regeneration and domain stacking. So what exactly happens by the time we reach endgame? There's also definitely at least the possibility that in this altered timeline, Yuji is actually the only realistic candidate to beat peak Sukuna. Not because Gojo or Yuta are weak, but because Sukuna's whole deal is adapting to cursed techniques and domains. Yuji is the one guy whose threat is aimed at Sukuna's soul, at the rule layer of the fight, not just the numbers. And that's exactly why the title of this video is about whether anyone could have beaten Sukuna, because in this timeline, you could argue even Gojo is the setup, and Yuji is the real checkmate. But if Yuji becomes that central, that broken, that much of a problem for every villain on the board, what happens when you drop that version of him directly into Sukuna's throne room, one-on-one, no Gojo, no safety net? That's where we need to go next. Quick detour. If you love this kind of deep dive, here's your next fix. And before we walk Yuji straight into the Sukuna meat grinder and see what exactly happens there, I want to quickly plug something that's going to make this whole conversation hit way harder for you guys. The thing that you need to understand is, this channel is kind of a JJK lab at this point. We're not just sitting here power scaling like, who wins, Gojo or Sukuna? No context, go. We're breaking down rules, narrative intent, and doing these cursed energy science experiments where we ask, okay, if the system works like this, what are the actual limits? That's exactly why the title of this video is talking about whether anyone could have beaten Sukuna, because we've already done the homework on the pieces around him. For example, if you're obsessed with Black Flash like I am, we've got a full mentality breakdown video that's literally just about why it's more mindset than mechanics. Not a here's the frame data goodbye thing, but really digging into why Nanami treats Black Flash like a routine, why Yuji treats it like a switch that flips his whole life, and why Gojo basically acts like he's too broken to even care about it most of the time. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out when it comes to could anyone beat Sukuna is who can actually access that state on command. And that Black Flash video is where we actually slow down and say, okay, what is happening in their heads? I'm going to give you a little bit more detail because this is where people start glazing him or downplaying him for no reason. In that Black Flash breakdown, we talk about how Yuji's Shibuya streak isn't just RNG luck. It's a mental alignment with cursed energy that he never fully gets back until Shinjuku. We compare that to Nanami's record and to Gojo, who could probably farm Black Flashes all day, but doesn't need to. If you want to understand why some sorcerers spike and others choke, that's your pre-game film study. Then on top of that, we've got a whole Gojo versus Sukuna domain theory deep dive, where we dissect every clash, counter, and adaptation step by step. Malevolent shrine angles, unlimited void timing, Mahoraga feeding Sukuna the answer key, the way reverse curse technique and domain restoration keep them in the game longer than they should be. If you've ever asked, why didn't Gojo just do X? We already went frame by frame on that. So for the sake of the video, mentally bookmark those two, Black Flash mentality and Gojo versus Sukuna domains. Think of this breakdown as part of a bigger Sukuna problem series we're building, where each upload attacks a different piece of his toolkit. We're diving right back in now though, because the point is still the same. In a world where everyone knows these rules, who, if anyone, could have actually put the King of Curses down for good? Gojo versus Sukuna, phase by phase. Where the strongest actually lost control. So when we talk about, could anyone have beaten Sukuna, we have to start with the one guy who actually looked like he did, right? Because the thing that you need to understand about Gojo versus Sukuna is that for like 70% of that fight, if you pause at random, you'd swear Gojo is the one-bodied Sukuna, not the other way around. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what exactly happens in those opening exchanges. Gojo pops domain first. He's confident. He's smiling. He's literally teaching class mid-fight. Unlimited Void comes out, and Sukuna is instantly on the back foot, forced into a defensive malevolent shrine just to not get his brain turned into Google Chrome with 400 tabs open. Gojo's sure hit information overload is cooking him so hard that even Sukuna's reactions look a little delayed at first. But the point is that early dominance is deceptive because of how their domains actually interact. Malevolent Shrine is barrierless, fixed radius, auto slash. Unlimited Void is a classic barrier domain with guaranteed hit once you're inside. For the sake of the video, I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here. Barrier domains usually auto-win the clash, but Sukuna's shrine doesn't clash the same way. It just exists, carving reality in a set area, while Gojo keeps forcing direct domain battles to fry Sukuna's mind faster than Sukuna can shred his body. This is where Mahoraga's adaptation data quietly starts mattering. Sukuna already fed Mahoraga to Unlimited Void through Megumi, watched it adapt, and banked that info. So even while he's losing the early domain war, he's running a background process, testing how long he can last, how Gojo sequences his expansions, how to time the shrine so its guaranteed slashes line up with the gaps in Gojo's control. Then we hit the hollow purple phase, and both of them just start playing chicken with existence. Gojo is willing to throw out city-level in purples even if it means blowing off his own arm, because he knows his reverse curse technique is cracked and he wants to keep the tempo insane. Sukuna, on the other hand, is calculated. He tanks, redirects, and positions himself so that every purple trade gives him more data on Gojo's ranges and dead angles instead of just being raw damage. The real pivot is when Sukuna finally unveils the Mahoraga inform counter to Unlimited Void. The moment he shows he can survive and function inside Gojo's sure hit, Gojo's main win condition evaporates mid-fight. He's no longer the guy with the unbeatable domain. He's just another sorcerer trying to out-DPS the king of curses in open play. And that's exactly why the title of this video is about could anyone beat Sukuna? Not was Gojo secretly weak, because Sukuna turned that battle into a rules problem. If he can solve Unlimited Void, what other unbeatable kits are secretly on a timer? And which sorcerers still have a rule he hasn't cracked yet? Why Gojo's toolkit wasn't the perfect anti-Sukuna answer. So when we say Gojo was a bad answer to Sukuna, we're not saying he's weak. We're saying he's accidentally the perfect sparring partner for the King of Curses' broken learning curve. The thing that you need to understand is that Limitless and Infinity don't really let you play small ball. You either crack the domain game, or you start throwing nukes. Infinity basically tells every opponent, you are not touching me with regular hands, which sounds amazing, but it funnels the matchup into exactly two lanes. Domain expansion or massive AoE that can ignore precise targeting. That's literally Sukuna's home field. Malevolent Shrine is a barrierless domain with fixed range guaranteed slashes, and Cleave auto-adjusts to your durability and cursed energy. So if you force him into that kind of high-stakes exchange over and over, you're giving him repeated, clean data points to adapt off of. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what exactly happens when your whole win condition is Unlimited Void. Gojo's checkmate button is, I overload your brain with infinite information, you're done. But once Mahoraga survives that once and starts spinning, Sukuna gets a conceptual counter handed to him on a platter. It's not just tank the damage, it's rewrite how your soul and brain process that information. After that, every time Gojo leans on Unlimited Void, he's actually playing into a solved problem. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here, because people keep glazing him like he had the perfect kit. Gojo's whole thing is space manipulation and overwhelming cursed energy output. Red, blue, purple, domain spam, insane CE efficiency. None of that directly grabs Sukuna's soul, edits technique structures, or messes with the rules of cleave and dismantle. It's all external pressure, and external pressure is exactly what Sukuna can model, simulate, and eventually respond to with raw IQ and adaptation. And that's exactly why their fight ends up being the best possible training arc for Sukuna. Gojo gives him prolonged domain clashes, repeated exposure to information-type effects, constant high-level CE interactions, and even shows him how top-tier reverse curse technique and domain restoration look in real time. You also can't at all quantify how much of Sukuna's post-Gojo confidence is just, I've literally seen the ceiling of pure output now. But the point is, Gojo turned the matchup into a lab session. Compare that to someone like Yuki with soul strikes, or Yuta with copy hacks. Those guys don't necessarily hit as hard, but they don't have to give Sukuna comfy, repeatable scenarios. A clean soul punch doesn't care about infinity. A weird copied technique can blindside him in ways he can't pre-simulate. For the sake of the video, keep that contrast in mind, because the next question is, what kind of kit actually denies Sukuna the time and structure he needs to adapt at all? Yuta Okotsu, copy-paste, God versus the King of Curses. And if we're talking about denying Sukuna comfy scenarios, we kind of have to talk about the one guy whose whole gimmick is, what if I just steal everybody's answers? Yuta. Because on paper, infinite cursed energy battery plus Rika plus copy sounds like the exact nightmare that should give the King of Curses a migraine. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what Yuta actually brings to the table when it comes to raw stats. The thing that you need to understand is that his cursed energy is stupid. We're talking second only to Gojo levels, to the point where he can just spam outputs that would gas out normal special grades. Then you add Rika, who is literally an external battery, an extra set of hands, and a built-in curse tool all at once. So even before we touch copy, you've got a sword user with ridiculous CE, regen, and a stand that punches with him. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on the copy part, because that's where people start glazing him as Sukuna counter. Yuta can stack multiple techniques. He's shown things like Inumaki's cursed speech, Dhruv-style Shikigami, and that pseudo-domain against Ryu and Uro. So against Sukuna, you start theory crafting. Imagine Yuta walking in with a simple domain prepped, some kind of barrier-type domain, a ranged hacks technique like curse speech or something that messes with perception, plus solid reverse curse technique for healing. It's not one Gojo tier broken ability, but 4 or 5 mid to high tier tools layered on top of each other until they basically approximate a top tier answer. But the thing is, there's also definitely at least the possibility that we're overrating how freely he can do that in a real fight. For the sake of the video, we have to remember the limitations. Yuta needs prior exposure to copy something, and really mastering it under Shinjuku speed pressure is a different story from using it in a tournament arc. Running several high-level techniques at once clearly puts strain on him and Rika. And domain-wise, he's not Gojo or Sukuna. His barrier work is good, but he's not out here winning clean domain clashes against Malevolent Shrine. So what exactly happens if we drop peak Yuta in front of fully informed post-Gojo Sukuna? Can he even start his game plan before getting dissected by Cleave and Dismantle? Sukuna's slashes auto-scale to durability and cursed energy, so tanking is fake. Malevolent Shrine covers a fixed radius with guaranteed hits, and Yuta's not proven he can just sit in that like it's a sauna. Rika can body block for a bit. Yuta can heal some damage. Maybe he uses a simple domain to carve out micro moments, but every second Sukuna is reading him, downloading his habits, and cutting away the options. So the point is, Yuta is terrifyingly versatile, but he doesn't have that one clean "you lose now" button against a Sukuna who knows his deal, unless he preps something super specific like a soul-focused combo or a crazy anti-domain package. And that sets up the real question. What happens when someone actually does have a single stupid win condition? Because that's where Hikari walks in like a casino glitch. Hikari's infinite jackpot. Can immortality outlast the king? Because that's where Hikari walks in like a casino glitch. And the thing that you need to understand is that he is literally the closest thing JJK has to a cheat code timer. Not a nuke, not an auto win button, but a countdown that says, You are not killing me for the next few minutes, good luck. So, what exactly happens with Hikari's domain? The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is his jackpot cycle. He pops idle death gamble, runs the pachinko script, and once he hits that jackpot, he gets this absurd buff. Effectively infinite cursed energy, auto RCT cranked to the max, and a body that just refuses to stay dead for a fixed duration. We saw him get his arm blown off, regenerate, get turned into a blood fountain by Kashimo, and he's still in there grinning like he's playing ranked for fun. That's why, on paper, Hikari looks like Sukuna's worst matchup mentally. He can fight completely reckless, trade limbs for positioning, tank what would be lethal slashes, and just keep coming. Against most characters, that's a nightmare. You can't attrition him, you can't scare him, and you can't really punish mistakes during jackpot because the punishment just gets refunded by his RCT. But the point is, Sukuna is not most characters, and his kit is specifically built to ignore people trying to tank their way through. Cleave auto-adjusts to durability and cursed energy, so if you're glazing Hikari's defense and saying he just heals it, Sukuna's slashes are scaling up with that same cursed energy pool, and then you add Malevolent Shrine, which is a barrierless domain with constant, guaranteed slashes in a fixed radius. Hikari can walk through a lot, but getting hit hundreds of times per minute by optimized soul-adjacent cuts is a different conversation. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on that soul angle, because when it comes to Sukuna, that's where people overrate Hikari. There's also definitely at least the possibility that Sukuna just starts aiming deeper, treating Hikari the way he treats Mahoraga or Yuji, not just cutting flesh, but stressing the soul itself. Jackpot cranks RCT and CE, but it doesn't rewrite your soul durability like Yuji's or Sukuna's freakish resilience. And even if Hikari survives the onslaught, you hit the real problem. Time. His immortality loop is busted, but it's not permanent. If Sukuna reads the gimmick, and this is Sukuna, he's going to lab your whole existence in like 30 seconds. He can just play keep away, jump roofs, shred the environment, and stall until that music stops. Once jackpot ends, the matchup flips so hard, Hikari basically goes from raid boss to high diff warm-up. So can Hikari outgrind the king? For the sake of the video, if he chains jackpots back to back and Sukuna doesn't immediately hard counter the domain startup, he's an insane staller and chaos factor. The kind of guy who could buy everyone else precious minutes. But without a true kill condition that bypasses Sukuna's RCT and soul level sturdiness, Hikari's more of a speed bump than a real executioner. And that raises the next question. What about someone whose whole thing actually is a kill condition baked into their body? Yuki Tsukumo and the Mass Gambit. One shot or nothing. And that kill condition baked into their body line is exactly where Yuki Tsukumo walks in. Because the thing that you need to understand is that Yuki is not just another brick in the special grade wall. She's someone who literally turned herself into a walking astrophysics problem. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what her kit actually looks like when we're scaling her to someone like Sukuna. Yuki's innate technique is mass manipulation. She can crank her own mass up to absurd levels without changing her size, which is why her punches were turning Kenjaku into paste, and why Tengen was basically like, yeah, if she really goes for it, the whole planet is in danger. On top of that, she's got Garuda, this super flexible Shikigami that can become a drill, a flail, a whip, a shield, whatever she needs. So we're talking black hole light body plus a cursed energy Beyblade. So could that actually one-shot Sukuna? On paper, there's also definitely at least the possibility. The thing is, mass-based damage doesn't really care about your conventional durability. If Yuki tags you while she's fully amped, the force is so stupid that even cleave auto-adjusting to durability or Sukuna's raw toughness might not matter. We saw her casually chunking Kenjaku, who is not some random jobber, and that wasn't even her literally ending the world setting. You give that same hit to Sukuna's physical body, and yeah, you can absolutely argue that his organs, his soul container, whatever you want to call it, are getting scrambled. But what exactly happens when you try to land that in a real fight, especially against fully informed Sukuna? This is where the fantasy starts falling apart. Yuki needs setup. She has to ramp her mass, commit to a line, and her strongest stuff is telegraphed as hell. Garuda's drill charge, her final rush at Kenjaku, all of that is big, linear, and loud. Sukuna is the king of punishing wind-up. Malevolent Shrine gives him a fixed radius, barrierless domain that's just, you exist, you get cut, and he doesn't have to let her get in range for free. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on the domain matchup, because it's actually where she gets bodied conceptually. Yuki doesn't have some dominant hacks domain that rewrites rules. She's more of a raw stats and technique monster. Sukuna, on the other hand, sits inside Shrine and just dissects anything that steps into his radius. Even if she pops a domain, his is optimized to overwrite and keep functioning, and he has proven domain restoration plus cracked reverse curse technique. She's trying to charge a railgun while standing in a blender. So for the sake of the video, if we imagine the dream scenario where Yuki fully winds up, Garuda lines the vector, and Sukuna either underestimates her or gets caught mid-cast, could she actually kill him in one shot? Yeah, that's probably her only real win condition, and if it lands clean, I think you can argue it deletes his body faster than he can meaningfully heal. But the point is, against a Sukuna who has seen her file, understands her technique, and is playing at max range with Shrine and Cleave, the odds of her ever getting that hit are microscopic. She's the definition of high risk, high reward. Either the King of Curses gets turned into cosmic dust, or she gets sliced apart before the gambit even spins up. And if Yuki, with literal black hole hands, is still mostly a long shot, what does that say about everyone who isn't built like a physics exploit? Maki, Toji, and the heavenly restriction problem. Can pure skill beat pure cheat? And that's kind of the perfect segue into the people who don't play physics, they just play raw stats. Because if Yuki with black hole hacks is still a long shot, the thing that you need to understand is that Maki and Toji are playing a completely different game. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what actually makes these two so stupid. No cursed energy, which sounds like a nerf, but in JJK that flips into a heavenly restriction buff where all that budget gets dumped into the body. We're talking insane physical stats, freakish durability, and senses that let them read killing intent and movement instead of cursed energy signatures. Then you stack mastery over cursed tools on top of that, so they're literally walking arsenals that bypass a lot of the usual jujutsu defenses just by swinging the right piece of metal. That's why Toji can just drop into Dagon's domain and body him with Playful Cloud, and why post-Zenin Massacre Maki is basically Toji 2.0 with even cleaner execution. For the sake of the video, think of them as anti-sorcerer raid bosses. stealth, speed, and one-touch lethality. Most sorcerers are relying on cursed energy perception, domain auto-hit effects, or layered barriers, and these two just don't care. You can't sense what isn't there, your domain doesn't auto-target them the same way, and suddenly the guy you thought was across the battlefield is behind you with a special grade tool at your throat. But Sukuna is not most sorcerers. The point is, his kit is built to delete that exact kind of cheese. Cleave auto-scales to durability and cursed energy, sure, but it's still a space-cutting attack once he dials it in, and Malevolent Shrine is a barrierless domain that just carpets the area in slashes. He doesn't need to feel your cursed energy if he's literally cutting everything in a fixed radius every fraction of a second, so can Maki or Toji sneak him? That's exactly why the title of this video is asking if anyone could beat him, because these two are probably the best candidates for the no hacks, just hands and tools archetype. Best case scenario, it's an ambush. Sukuna is distracted in a domain clash, focused on Gojo level threats, and a fully stocked Toji or Maki comes in with something broken like the inverted Spear of Heaven or a cursed tool with some wild unrevealed effect. Pattern interrupt here, because I know some of you are already glazing Toji like he's soloing Heian. What exactly happens if they actually tag Sukuna? If the tool ignores his cursed energy and hits something vital, there's also definitely at least the possibility of a one-shot. Heavenly restriction monsters don't chip you down. They delete you if they get their win condition. But when it comes to a fair 1 versus 1, alert Sukuna, no outside chaos. They're severe underdogs. No domain, no real ranged options, no hacks, and they have to close distance against auto-scaling, map-wide slashes, and a guy with top-tier combat IQ who's already seen every weird ability in the series. They can theoretically kill him under perfect conditions, but in any honest fight, pure skill into pure cheat is probably getting bodied. And if even the peak human builds struggle that hard, we have to start talking about people who break the rules from inside the system. Domain gamblers like Hikari, or sorcerers who can actually mess with Sukuna's win conditions instead of playing by them. Kenjaku and the prep god angle. Could a schemer ever outplay Sukuna? So if raw stat sticks and broken kits are already getting humbled, what about the guy who doesn't play fair at all? What about the brain who literally turned the entire modern era into one big science experiment? We have to talk about Kenjaku, because if anyone is cooking a Sukuna loss screen in the background, it's him. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what Kenjaku actually brings to the table. The thing that you need to understand is that he's not strong in the Gojo or Sukuna sense. He's strong in the "I've been body hopping for centuries, stole Suguru Geto's curse arsenal, and have a PhD in Jujutsu history sense." He knows every busted technique, every clan secret, and he's literally curated a zoo of special grade curses and sorcerers just to see what exactly happens when you shake the box. So in a perfect prep scenario, what does that look like? For the sake of the video, imagine Kenjaku has time, information, and zero moral restraints, which he already doesn't. He can stack layered barriers like Shibuya, force Sukuna into specific kill boxes, and then flood those zones with curses that cover different vectors. Long-range beams, poison, hacks like idle transfiguration-style body control. Even domain users whose only job is to burn Sukuna's resources. You get this image of Sukuna walking in and instantly getting hit with 10 different win conditions at once. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here, because people kind of glaze Kenjaku as just a schemer. Think about coordinated domain clashes designed only to crack Malevolent Shrine's rhythm, plus binding vows that punish Sukuna for leaving an area, plus sacrificial pawns like Jogo-level bombs detonating point blank to force him into constant reverse curse technique. You're not beating him in one clean checkmate, you're trying to run him out of time, stamina, or options. But the point is, Kenjaku is a mastermind, not a frontline monster. Even in his own fights, he's leaning on curse combos and trickery. He's not walking up and out slugging someone who casually bodied Mahoraga and traded with Gojo. Any Kenjaku beats Sukuna agenda runs into the same wall. Once Sukuna is actually cornered, who is landing the finishing blow? Kenjaku doesn't have a sure kill slash, an unlimited void tier domain, or some guaranteed soul hacks that sticks on a guy who already shrugged off Yuji's internal rebellion. And that's where Sukuna's personality becomes a problem for any prep god. He doesn't cooperate, he doesn't panic, and every time he's contained, he just brute forces a new answer. Whether that's adapting through Mahoraga, rewriting cleave mid-fight, or weaponizing his own domain rules. You try to script the fight, he throws away the script. So yeah, there's also definitely at least the possibility that Kenjaku engineers a tiny window where someone else can kill Sukuna. But on his own, he's the dungeon designer, not the raid boss. And the scary part is asking, who could actually capitalize on that window if it ever existed? Coalition theory. If everyone jumps Sukuna, does he still win? So if Kenjaku is the dungeon designer, the first thing that we're going to need to figure out is, what happens if we actually bring a full raid party to this fight? Like, no more 1 versus 1 pride matches, no more Gojo solo fantasies, just a sweaty, optimized MMO comp all dogpiling Sukuna at once. For the sake of the video, let's build the most crack squad we can reasonably justify. We've got Gojo as the main caster tank, Yuta as the flex support / DPS, Hikari as the infinite combo gremlin, Yuki as the off-tank nuke, Maki as the anti-cursed energy assassin, Kashimo as the suicide burst damage, and awakened Yuji as the win condition specialist. Everybody prepped, everybody bloodlusted, everybody knows exactly what Sukuna has already shown in Shinjuku. The thing that you need to understand is that this isn't just more bodies equals win. We'd need a layered game plan. Gojo and Yuki handle the macro. Domains, big AoE pressure, forcing Sukuna to constantly spend brain power and cursed energy on survival instead of styling. Hikari and Kashimo are glued to his face, trading their lives and jackpots and lightning form just to keep him from comfortably lining up Malevolent Shrine or dissecting the field. Meanwhile, Yuta and Yuji are playing for soul and technique disruption, looking for that one clean hit where copied techniques or soul-splitting punches actually desync his control over Megumi's body. Maki just sits in the shadows like Toji 2.0, waiting for Sukuna to tunnel on the monsters so she can go for the neck. But what exactly happens when you try to run all of that at once? Immediately you hit coordination nightmares, Gojo's unlimited void fries allies. Yuki's mass and black hole tech don't exactly scream friendly fire off. Hikari's jackpot brawling ignores collateral. Kashimo's lightning is not OSHA compliant, and Yuji has to literally punch Sukuna's soul without accidentally bodying his teammates. Domains overlap weirdly. Barrier rules clash, and every tiny misstep is something Sukuna can turn into a 4K highlight reel. and Sukuna's response is disgusting. Barrierless domain means if they ever cluster, they're getting shaved by cleave, auto-adjusting to each person's durability. He's going to prioritize in the nastiest order. Maki and Yuji first if he senses real kill potential, Yuta before he can fully spin up his copy Wincon, then Yuki and Hikari once the chaos engines are spent, leaving Gojo alone in the late game again. The thing is, he's already learned from Mahoraga, from Gojo, from Yuji. His tactical IQ is min-maxed. So does the coalition win? There's also definitely at least the possibility they do, but it's entirely hostage to one or two pieces. If Yuji actually lands the clean soul hit, or Yuta steals the right technique at the right second, the King of Curses can absolutely die here. If they miss that window even once, the raid wipes. And the scary part is asking, what if you take one of those pieces off the board and make them fight him alone? The fully informed Sukuna. Why late game king is almost unbeatable 1 versus 1. So if the raid wipes the second, they lose that 1-win condition. What exactly happens when it's just you and Sukuna in a closed room? No backup, no domain tag team, nothing. This is where endgame, fully informed Sukuna stops being a strong character and starts feeling like the final exam of the entire JJK system. The thing that you need to understand is that by late game, Sukuna is basically playing with everyone's save data loaded. He's got Mahoraga's adaptation logs from Shibuya, he's got first-hand experience trading domains and purple beams with Gojo. He's seen Yuta's copy nonsense, Yuki's mass shenanigans, Kashimo's lightning, Hikari's jackpot, all of it. Every exotic win condition that Gege showed off across the series. Sukuna either watched it, tanked it, or dissected it. And that knowledge doesn't just sit there as trivia. For the sake of the video, think about how he walks into a fight now. Domain spammer? He's already stress-tested barrierless malevolent shrine against multiple domain types and figured out how to crack unlimited void. Pure brawler. He's literally been bodying Yuji level hands since chapter 1. Hacks user with some weird auto-kill condition. He immediately starts probing the activation rules, checking range, timing, and what the technique cares about. The same way he tested Mahoraga's adaptation and Gojo's sure hit. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on that problem solving, because this is where people kind of undersell him. When Gojo drops unlimited void, Sukuna doesn't just brute force it. He uses Mahoraga as a live lab rat, watches how it adapts, and then reverse engineers a counter rotation he can apply himself later. When he sees a domain interaction he doesn't like, he literally rewrites his own approach mid-battle, cycling between Shrine, Raw Slashes and RCT Sustain until he finds the line that works. And you stack that brain on top of the Raw kit and it gets ugly. Barrierless domain with a fixed radius means you can't just simple domain your way out like it's Jogo. The environment itself is the problem. Cleave auto-scales to your durability and cursed energy, so tanking is almost a joke. He's got solid reverse curse technique, domain restoration, and stupid physical stats, so he's both the raid boss and the glass cannon killer at the same time. You can't out-sustain him easily, and you can't trade with him casually. So what actually beats that, one-on-one, in a fair fight? The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is whether you can bring something so alien that his experience doesn't matter. We're talking a completely unique soul hack, or win conditions that ignore durability, cursed energy, and even soul structure in a way he hasn't modeled yet. There's also definitely at least the possibility of some totally broken, unanswerable hacks existing off-screen. But nothing we've seen in series really clears that bar without prep or team play. And that's exactly why the title of this video is asking if anyone could have beaten him. Because when you look at this version of Sukuna, you start realizing the real question isn't who's stronger, it's who could ever surprise him at all. Back to Yuji. Why a soul-based MC might be the only true hard counter. And if almost nobody can surprise Sukuna on a system level, then we kind of have to go back to the one guy whose entire kit is built to ignore the system in the first place, Yuji. The thing that you need to understand is that most of Sukuna's defenses are cursed energy rules. Cleave auto-adjust based on your CE and durability. Malevolent Shrine is guaranteed hits inside a domain framework. Reverse curse technique patches up anything you manage to land. He's stacking domain supremacy, CE efficiency, and tank stats. But Yuji's soul punches are basically walking up to that whole structure, looking at it and saying, "Cool story, bro," and hitting the part that those rules don't cover. When it comes to everyone else, you're playing inside Sukuna's sandbox. You're throwing domains at a better domain, curse techniques at a better curse technique, RCT at a guy who literally pioneered RCT mid-fight while bleeding out. But if Yuji can actually damage Sukuna's soul directly, you're bypassing that entire layer. You don't have to out-heal him if the thing you're breaking is the core data his RCT is trying to restore. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here, because this is where it gets nasty. Soul damage isn't just HP loss. We've already seen in series that messing with the soul can distort techniques, personalities, even how the body responds. If Yuji's upgraded Shinjuku level soul strikes can destabilize Sukuna's soul, there's also definitely at least the possibility that you interrupt his adaptation process, scramble his domain control, or make his CE output inconsistent for a few key moments. And against someone like Sukuna, a few key moments is literally the whole fight. Now, why Yuji specifically, and not some random soul sorcerer OC we're glazing in our heads? The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is exposure. Yuji has shared a body with Sukuna. He's been overwritten, hijacked, and forced to watch massacres from the inside. Out of everyone in the series, he's the only one who's had Sukuna's soul sitting in the same chair as his, over and over again. So when he learns how to aim at souls, whose soul do you think his instincts are tuned to? That's where the thematic symmetry kicks in. The boy who housed Sukuna got bodied emotionally every time Sukuna took over, and then swore he'd be the one to kill him. Is also the one whose late-game power literally reaches into the soul, where no domain expansion can completely wall him out. It's not just edgy poetry, it's matchup logic. So what exactly happens if we take awakened Shinjuku Yuji and put him in front of endgame Sukuna, not as a meme power fantasy, but as an actual rules-based fight? Does this MC finally have the tools to win, or does the King of Curses still download him? For the sake of the video, we're going to treat that as a serious question and build the final scenario around it. Awakened Yuji versus Shibuya Sukuna, the first real check on the king. So if endgame Sukuna is the final exam, Shibuya Sukuna is like the midterm, where the teacher still pretends you have a chance. The thing that you need to understand is we're not throwing Yuji at peak, Mahoraga downloading, Gojo slaying Sukuna yet. For this round, it's 15-finger Shibuya Sukuna versus freshly awakened Yuji, with Black Flash on Lock and Soul hits online. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is the actual setup. We're still in Shibuya, buildings half broken, bodies everywhere. But there's space to move, space to sprint, and no one is third-partying. Sukuna's at around the level he was when he bodied Jogo and played with Mahoraga's adaptation. But he hasn't gone through the Gojo fight. He hasn't fully optimized Malevolent Shrine yet. Yuji, on the other hand, is Shinjuku level in terms of soul awareness and Black Flash mastery. But we strip the extra hacks we talked about earlier. No Yuki lab notes, no blood manipulation, no Kusakabe barrier coaching, just raw CE control, insane durability, and soul-breaking punches. So what exactly happens when they first clash? Sukuna obviously opens this thinking he's dealing with his old Airbnb, the same vessel he's been mentally shattering and flexing on since Chapter 1. He lets Yuji in close just to be disrespectful, probably throws a lazy cleave to test him. But the point is, this time Yuji doesn't just tank it, he adjusts his CE, minimizes the cut, and swings back with a Black Flash that actually bites into Sukuna's soul. Not a full combo yet, just a clean, perfectly timed hit that makes Sukuna's face twitch for the first time in Shibuya. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on Malevolent Shrine here, because that's where the fight really flips. Once Sukuna realizes Yuji's hits are different, he's not going to play around. He drops the barrierless domain. Now Yuji is under constant auto-aim slashes that scale to his durability, and normally that's where characters just get diced. But awakened Yuji has stupid durability, plus the CE control to harden specific parts of his body, to roll with cuts instead of getting bisected. He's bleeding, he's getting chipped, but he's still walking forward, still closing the gap in a domain where you're not supposed to move at all. There's also definitely at least the possibility for a crazy turning point. Yuji managing to keep a flicker of simple domain up just long enough to create a dead zone in the shrine, dash in, and land a chain Black Flash directly on Sukuna's soul. We're talking back-to-back hits, the kind of combo that literally cracked Mahito's entire existence. Sukuna tries to RCT it away out of habit and realizes this damage doesn't fully reset. That's the first real oh moment for the King of Curses. Does Yuji win here? Probably not. Shibuya Sukuna still has the speed, the experience, and the domain control to either escape or grind Yuji down once the surprise factor wears off. But the thing is, this is the first version of the story where Sukuna walks away injured, annoyed, and actually respecting Yuji as something more than a vessel. This is where the seed of fear gets planted, where Sukuna starts planning around Yuji instead of just glazing his own invincibility. And if Shibuya Sukuna is already forced to adapt, what happens when we throw this awakened Yuji at the version of Sukuna who's seen Gojo, seen Yuta, seen everything? Training arc on fast forward. How awakened Yuji grows before the final war. So when we jump forward to post-Shibuya in this timeline, Yuji is not just the kid who watched Sukuna massacre Shibuya and folded under the guilt. He's the guy who already tagged Sukuna, already made him bleed, already forced the King of Curses to walk away irritated. The thing that you need to understand is that this completely rewires his brain going into the training arc portion of the story. In canon, Yuji is drowning in survivor's guilt, just kind of accepting that he's the problem. Here, he still hates himself. He still feels responsible. But there's this poisonous little hope mixed in. I can hurt him. That turns I should die into I have to become the executioner. So every mission, every spar, every black flash is no longer about keeping up with the grade ones. It's literally R&D for killing Sukuna. So what exactly happens in training? The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is his focus. Instead of just repping hands and praying for black flash RNG, Yuji is going to be obsessed with his soul technique. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here because this is where it gets crazy. He'd be drilling that feeling from Shibuya the moment his fist bit into Sukuna's soul, trying to reproduce that on command. Reading CE flows, feeling the shape of souls mid-combat, adjusting his angle and timing so every punch is a mini soul-splitting event even before he formally learns that term. And obviously, that feeds right into Black Flash consistency. Yuji already has insane physical control, but now he knows that Black Flash plus soul contact is the one thing Sukuna actually respects. So you get a Yuji who can chain Black Flashes not just off emotion, but off information. He reads your CE, predicts your move, and slams a perfectly timed Black Flash into the fault line of your soul. There's also definitely at least the possibility that he starts intuitively doing stuff that looks like a baby version of Shrine's precision, just without the slashes. Now, mentors. The point is, Gojo and company cannot treat this kid like a generic frontline brawler anymore. Gojo has literal proof that Yuji can do what even he can't, directly threaten Sukuna's soul without a hacks technique. For the sake of the video, imagine Gojo actually sitting down and breaking CE theory with Yuji, not just dumping him on Nanami. Yuta would be sparring him constantly, testing how his soul punches interact with Rika level output. Mei, being Mei, sees a walking Sukuna hedge fund and starts planning risk management around him, making sure he's alive and optimized for the final war. By the time we hit the final arc, this Yuji is not scrappy protagonist who can hang with grade ones. He's a specialist. In pure hands, he's reliably threatening top tiers, the way Maki bodies special grades, but with the added terror that every clean hit might bypass your durability because he's punching your soul. Against Sukuna, that's uniquely scary. And remember, Sukuna is also evolving. He's seen Gojo's domain, Yuta's versatility, Hikari's jackpot, all of that. But now he has to plan around a Yuji who's at his own peak too, who understands his soul, his CE, his hatred. That's exactly why the title of this video is asking if anyone could have beaten Sukuna, because the endgame in this timeline isn't just a power clash, it's a pure ideological and mechanical showdown between the perfected King of Curses and the perfected executioner he accidentally created. And if their training arcs are racing each other the whole time, what happens when somebody else tries to step between them at the finish line? Endgame. Awakened Yuji versus fully informed Sukuna, 1 versus 1 conditions. So the first thing that we're going to need to figure out before we start glazing either of them as the GOAT is what exactly happens if nobody gets to interfere at that finish line. No Gojo, no Yuta, no random Kashimo suicide pool, just the two monsters that have been speedrunning each other's evolution finally being locked in a room with no exits. For the sake of the video, that room is actually a completely neutral open field. No buildings, no civilians, no hostages, no Megumi body to leverage, no Yuji friends to threaten. Just flat terrain, clear visibility, and no domain-friendly architecture to cheese angles. Both of them are bloodlusted, which basically means no speeches, no stalling, They're going to kill on sight. But at the same time, they have full knowledge of each other's kits, habits, and win conditions, so nobody is walking in blind like it's early Shibuya. On Sukuna's side, we are talking about absolute peak. Full fingers, full Heian experience, all the post-Gojo fight data, Mahoraga-informed counters to domains and weird hacks, complete mastery of Malevolent Shrine with that fixed radius, barrierless slaughter zone, and reverse curse technique on lock. The thing that you need to understand is that this Sukuna has already fought awakened Yuji before in this timeline, so he's seen the soul-breaking punches, the shrine interactions, the black flash spikes. He's not underestimating the kid that once got bodied by Choso. He's targeting the one true threat to his throne. Yuji, on the other hand, is not potential Yuji. He's not, if he just trained more, Yuji. This is maximum development. Full soul technique unlocked and refined, to the point where every clean hit is trying to overwrite Sukuna's very existence. Black Flash isn't a lucky proc anymore. It's a mastered rhythm he can enter on demand when the conditions line up. He's got his own shrine, simple domain usage, reverse curse technique from all that body-swapping grind, and he's deeply familiar with Sukuna's tempo, feints, and kill patterns from clashing with him over and over. Their intent is brutally simple. Sukuna wants to erase the anomaly that can actually kill him at the root. No more experiments, no more playing with his food. Yuji walks in fully accepting that he might die, his soul might shatter, his body might get turned into red mist inside Malevolent Shrine, but if he can drag Sukuna down with him, that's a trade he takes every single time. No hesitation, no I want to save him, just execution. So now the question isn't, could Yuji tag Sukuna once? It's, in a pure, no-excuses deathmatch where both are optimized, does Yuji's hyper-specialized hard counter to souls outweigh Sukuna's broader, more oppressive toolkit? Are perfectly timed black flashes and soul-splitting punches enough to break through auto-adjusting cleave, infinite slashes, and Mahoraga-learned domain counters? Or does the King of Curses still outscale him by sheer volume of options? And there's also, definitely, at least the possibility that the answer changes depending on who commits first, which is exactly what we need to break down next, when we actually walk through how that fight would play out, opening move to final hit. Inside the clash, how a peak Yuji versus peak Sukuna fight actually plays out. So if we actually drop peak Shinjuku Yuji in front of peak Shrine Sukuna and say, no running, no outside interference, just hands, what exactly happens? The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is the opener, because with these two, whoever controls that first 10 seconds is probably dictating the entire tempo. Sukuna is not playing around here. He's seen what Yuji's soul can do. He's already been grazed by those punches in Shinjuku, so in this rematch scenario, he literally goes straight to Malevolent Shrine. No testing jabs, no playful cleave. Shrine blooms. The city or battlefield just gets carved into a blender, and Yuji is instantly fighting under permanent auto-adjusting slashes. The thing that you need to understand is that this isn't dodge a few lines and you're fine. Cleave is reading his durability and cursed energy every frame. So Yuji has to do that Shinjuku thing, where he's reinforcing specific joints, ribs, the back of his neck, constantly reallocating CE just to not get bodied off screen. He's weaving through invisible kill zones, burning stamina every second. But the point is, he's forcing himself into mid-range, then close range, because that's where his soul damage actually matters. Once he's in, it turns into those disgusting scramble exchanges. Yuji eats shallow slashes on the arms and shoulders on purpose, letting Shrine chip his body so he can keep his feet planted for a half second longer. And that's where you get the first black flash. He times Sukuna's cleave wind-up, slips inside the angle, and just detonates one straight into the chest. Soul and body at the same time. You get that panel where Sukuna's expression actually cracks, CE flow inside him spasms, and Shrine flickers for like a heartbeat. But obviously it's not one-sided. Every time Yuji commits, Sukuna is layering in different /vectors and CE outputs, testing what kind of contact produces the least feedback on his soul. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here. He starts mixing in those thin surgical cleaves aimed at nerves and tendons, trying to maim instead of overkill. Because overkill is exactly what lets Yuji sync up and land Black Flash. Meanwhile, Yuji is low-key downloading Sukuna's rhythm, the micro delay between domain pulses and hand movements, using that simple domain flicker as a metronome to time his own bursts. Mid-fight, you've got this nasty pattern. Yuji lands a second, then a third Black Flash, and you can visually see Sukuna's soul structure fraying, his reverse curse technique getting less efficient. But Yuji's lungs are shredded, his legs are carved up, CE reserves are tanking. Shrine never turned off, remember. We end up on this knife's edge where both of them are literally one mistake from dying. Sukuna's soul is strained enough that one more perfect hit might actually crack it. But Yuji's body is so ruined that one more full power cleave line through his core probably deletes him on the spot. And there's also definitely at least the possibility that the entire fight swings on something tiny. Does Yuji gamble on a final all-in Black Flash? Or does Sukuna finally risk dropping Shrine for a half second to unleash something we haven't even seen yet? Because if he does, the matchup we've been talking about this whole time might not even be the real ceiling. Win conditions. What has to happen for Yuji to actually kill Sukuna? So if that hidden option select from Sukuna is real, what exactly happens if Yuji calls his bluff and goes all in anyway? The thing that you need to understand is that Yuji's win condition is not some clean, anime protagonist walk away with the girl victory. His only real path is a mutual kill where Sukuna's soul breaks first. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what a kill on Sukuna even looks like. You're not just deleting HP. You have to damage his body, his cursed energy control, and his soul, all faster than his reverse curse technique and adaptation can stabilize. That means Yuji can't just tag him once with a cute Black Flash and start glazing him like, yeah, he's the GOAT now. He needs multiple direct soul strikes, back to back, ideally all Black Flashes, in a tiny window. Why the rush? Because every second you give Sukuna is another second of RCT patching him up and his brain downloading your tech. We literally watched him use Mahoraga as a tutorial boss to figure out how to deal with unlimited void, then carry that into the Gojo fight. If you let that guy see the same trick twice, you're cooked. So for the sake of the video, Yuji's win line is basically a Black Flash combo video on Sukuna's soul before the King of Curses can hit adapt. That also means he cannot be chilling in Malevolent Shrine for very long. The thing is, Shrine is not a fight here zone. It's a you are being dissected on a molecular level zone. Even with simple domain, even with his crazy durability, the longer Yuji stays in there, the more he's getting chipped, carved, and information gathered. Every extra rotation of those slashes is more data for Sukuna's IQ and less blood in Yuji's body. So what does a winning sequence actually look like? I'm going to give you a little bit more detail because this is where it gets fun. Yuji has to bait Sukuna into overcommitting to a high output attack, something shrine level or an amped cleave volley that locks Sukuna's posture and attention for a moment. While Sukuna is mid-commitment, Yuji has to slip inside his guard, probably burning his own body to tank at least one lethal slash, and then chain soul-focused black flashes, face, chest, core, maybe even a final one aimed at that inner soul space we saw when their souls clashed early series. Pattern interrupt. What if Yuji lands the first black flash and his arm just explodes from the recoil? That's still a win he has to take, because his win condition already assumes he dies or is crippled in the process. He's not walking away from Shrine. He's betting that his soul reach and willingness to die outpace Sukuna's RCT and ego. And that's exactly why the title of this video is about whether anyone could beat Sukuna. Because Yuji can, but only by embracing that suicidal all-in play. The next question is, does anyone else even have a comparable win con? Sukuna's outs. How the king still finds ways to survive. Yuji's nightmare matchup. But the thing that you need to understand is that Sukuna is not just going to sit there and let Yuji run the I punch your soul and we both explode game plan on loop. If anything, the second Yuji shows that win con, Sukuna flips into lab rat mode. He's testing, he's logging data. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what exactly happens after that first serious clash. Yuji tags him once, maybe even forces a near-death RCT moment, and Sukuna immediately starts watching for the tells. Is there a micro shift in Yuji's CE flow before a soul punch? Does Black Flash only come out when Yuji's rhythm and anger spike together? He's already the guy who reverse-engineered Mahoraga's adaptation mid-fight, so reading Yuji's timing is light work for him. Once he understands the conditions, he's going to start building space. The point is, Yuji's nightmare matchup is close range, chest to chest. If I touch you, you die. So Sukuna just refuses to play that range. He starts spamming clones, layered slashes, and terrain nukes, breaking floors, pillars, entire city blocks to keep Yuji constantly repositioning. You can't line up a perfect Black Flash if you're literally dodging a 360-degree blender every second. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on that mid-range dynamic because it's really where Sukuna still feels like the king. Cleave already auto-adjusts to durability and CE, Malevolent Shrine covers a fixed radius, and he can throw out feint slashes that don't even aim to kill, they just herd. Yuji steps in. He eats a curtain of horizontal cuts. Yuji tries to jump. Vertical cross slashes. It turns into bullet hell, not a boxing match. And there's also definitely at least the possibility that Sukuna starts dabbling in his own form of soul manipulation as a counter. Remember, this is the guy who lived inside Yuji's body, read his memories, and directly interacted with his soul multiple times. For the sake of the video, assume Sukuna takes that knowledge and starts layering his own soul with cursed energy in weird ways, creating partial buffers so a clean soul punch doesn't fully connect, or splitting his presence across clones to muddy Yuji's targeting. If he can drag things into a long-range attrition-based domain war, it gets even scarier. Yuji's CE control is cracked, but Sukuna's reserves, RCT efficiency, and domain restoration are still top tier. A barrierless shrine that he can pop, clash and recast turns the battlefield into his home court. And every second Yuji spends defending is a second he's not lining up that suicidal finisher. So even in this worst-case matchup, Sukuna isn't hard-countered into helplessness. Yuji just finally makes it fair. And the crazy part is, once we start talking about other top tiers trying to copy Yuji's win con, that fair might be the best anyone ever gets against the King of Curses. Narrative logic versus power logic. Why Gege didn't let Yuji win in Shibuya? So if fair is the best anyone ever gets against Sukuna on a pure matchup level, why didn't Gege just let Yuji be fair in Shibuya? Why not flip the switch early, drop Shinjuku Yuji into that station and wrap this man up before the body count gets insane? The thing that you need to understand is that JJK is not built like a classic battle shonen power fantasy. It's built like a horror tragedy where the system is the real villain. Curses are literally the byproduct of human misery. Jujutsu society is corrupt on every level, and Sukuna is the face of all of that. He can't just be a really strong boss. He has to feel like the living proof that this world is rigged. If Yuji awakens in Shibuya and bodies him, that tone evaporates. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what exactly happens to Yuji's character if he wins too early. His whole arc is slow, ugly growth. He gets bodied by Choso, he watches Nanami die, he becomes a passenger while Sukuna slaughters Shibuya, and he has to wake up the next day and keep going. The point is that he fails repeatedly and still chooses to stand back up. An early awakening that suddenly lets him clap Dagon, Jogo, and maybe even check Sukuna, kind of deletes the entire emotional spine of his story. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here because it's easy to say, well, the mechanics allow it, so why not? Gege has been very clear in the way he writes that thematic weight beats fair power scaling every time. Sukuna isn't just stronger Hanami or Gojo's rival, he's the cost of sorcery made flesh. Every time someone gambles their life on a domain, every time a colony turns into a slaughterhouse, Sukuna is the payoff to that cruelty. Letting Yuji shortcut to Shinjuku level in Shibuya would be like speedrunning the bill before we've even seen the debt rack up. And that's why Sukuna's late-game dominance matters so much. Gojo dying, Yuta's desperate plans, Hikari gambling his soul, Maki turning into the Toji 2.0 boogeyman. All of that only feels proportionate because this is the guy they're trying to stop. If Sukuna gets solved in Shibuya, the coalition we see later suddenly looks like overkill. The stakes shrink, the sacrifices feel extra, and the entire final arc stops feeling like the world's last stand and turns into cleanup after that one time Yuji went crazy. So yeah, for the sake of the video, our what if works mechanically. There's also definitely at least the possibility that, with Shinjuku stats, Yuji turns Shibuya into his personal training montage. But Gege clearly wanted a longer, harsher road to confronting Sukuna, where every failure, every body, and every finger eaten stacks into that final clash. And the wild part is, once you look at how that road shapes everyone else around Yuji, you start to realize he might not even be the only one who could have walked it. So, could anyone have beaten Sukuna 1 versus 1 under fair rules? So if we zoom all the way out from Shibuya Yuji solos and ask the bigger question, could anyone, under fair rules, just walk up and 1 versus 1 Sukuna and actually win? Not almost win, not made him try. I mean a real, reliable dub. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is the baseline. Endgame. Fully informed Sukuna is literally a different species. He's got cleave that auto-tunes to your durability, a barrierless domain that ignores most normal counterplay, cracked reverse curse technique, plus battle IQ from Heian to Shinjuku. The thing that you need to understand is, nobody is casually rolling this guy. If you fight him straight up with him knowing you're a threat, you're already playing from behind. Now obviously, in canon, Gojo comes the closest. 6 eyes, limitless, unlimited void. The whole strongest in the modern era package. But the thing is, Gojo's entire kit is exactly what Sukuna wants to download. Mahoraga versus Unlimited Void gives Sukuna a literal tutorial on how to deal with Gojo's win condition. Once that adaptation data exists, Gojo's domain stops being a guaranteed kill and turns into a puzzle Sukuna has already solved. So yeah, Gojo pushes him to the brink, but once Malevolent Shrine is tailored around that counter, the loss was almost baked in. What about everybody else we've been glazing as Sukuna answers? Yuta has copy hacks and Rika, but he's on a timer and his body just isn't built to trade with guaranteed slashes for long. Hikari with infinite jackpot is crazy, but Sukuna's damage output and domain games mean there's also definitely at least the possibility he just hard checks Hikari's immortality window and wins the second the music stops. Yuki has mass hacks and Garuda, but we literally saw how fragile that win con is against special grades. Kenjaku is a walking bag of cursed techniques, but he's a schemer, not a frontline duelist, and in a straight 1v1, he probably gets bodied. Maki is the scary one on paper. No cursed energy, heavenly restriction, anti-domain type fighter. But again, what exactly happens when a guy who auto-adjusts his slashes just starts carving up pure flesh and bone with no CE defenses at all? She's insane, but she's not eating Malevolent Shrine and walking it off. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on the one real outlier. Awakened Yuji. Soul hits ignore durability scaling. Black Flash lets him spike his output into nonsense territory, and his whole kit is literally built around hitting Sukuna where he can't adapt, his soul, in a what if, where Yuji fast-tracks all his Shinjuku growth, stacks suicidal Black Flash chains, and commits to a double KO mindset. He actually has a theoretical hard counterpath. But the point is, under strict canon timing and growth, the answer is no, not reliably. Under generous what-if conditions. Yeah, but only Yuji, and only if he pays everything. And that's exactly why the title of this video is framed around what happens when we move that awakening. Because if one broken protagonist barely clears a path to killing Sukuna, what happens when you stop playing fair and start stacking monsters together? Coalitions, traps, and prep. Is there any scenario where the verse kills Sukuna for sure? So if one broken protagonist barely threads that needle, what happens when you stop pretending this is a fair 1v1 and start treating Sukuna like a literal MMO raid boss? The thing that you need to understand is that, in a verse where everyone is built to lose to the King of Curses, the only way you guarantee a kill is by accepting that most of your party is not coming back to the lobby. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is, what does a fully optimized coalition even look like? For the sake of the video, we're stacking the absolute dream team. You've got Gojo at his peak, Yuta with full copy hacks, and Rika. Hikari on infinite jackpot, Yuki with her mass curse and black hole, Maki as the Toji 2.0 assassin, Kashimo in his lightning god form, and awakened Yuji with Shrine, Soul Mastery, and all the tech he gets post-Shibuya. Perfect knowledge, perfect comms, zero ego. Nobody is glazing in mid-fight, they're all playing to win. So what exactly happens when you throw all of that at Sukuna at once? You don't just dogpile him and hope. You run a layered, ugly, sacrificial game plan. Gojo, Yuta, and Hikari are your frontline domains, cycling expansions specifically to force out Malevolent Shrine, burn his brain with repeated domain clashes, and farm information on Cleave's outputs, his RCT timing, and how he reacts to different damage types. People are going to die in that phase. That's the point. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on the mid-fight. Yuki and Kashimo are basically suicide DPS. Yuki throws Garuda and her mass into every opening, trying to force a black hole moment where Sukuna has to hard commit resources to survive, while Kashimo trades his entire life bar just to tag Sukuna's soul and body with an unfamiliar high-voltage pattern he has to adapt to. Maki is playing off-angle, waiting for the 1 second Sukuna's attention splits, to try and recreate that Toji-style ambush that actually threatens his real body. But the point is, none of that is actually your win condition. The win condition is Yuji. Everything is built around dragging Sukuna to a state where his soul is chipped, partially mapped out by repeated exposure to Yuji's presence, and his CE efficiency is scuffed from constant domain stress and RCT spam. There's also definitely at least the possibility that Gojo or Hikari high roll and kill him early, but you can't bank on that. You bank on Yuji landing the final direct soul hit when Sukuna is tired, over-adapted, and just a little bit arrogant. So can the verse kill Sukuna with perfect prep and teamwork? Yeah, but only by treating him like a raid boss where victory is Yuji standing over the corpse with half the cast gone, not the heroes dominating. And the crazy part is, that's exactly why the title of this video is framed around moving Yuji's awakening. Because what happens if you try to run that raid years earlier, in Shibuya, before half these pieces even exist? The real answer, Sukuna, wins the power game, Yuji wins the story. So this is where we kind of have to zoom out from the matchup chart brain and ask a different question, right? Because the thing that you need to understand is that Sukuna isn't just the strongest guy in the room. He's written as the ceiling of the entire Jujutsu system, the final form of what happens when someone min-maxes cursed energy, technique, and malice to a completely broken degree. Look at his kit. Cleave that auto-adjusts to your durability, Malevolent Shrine being barrierless and just deleting everything in a fixed radius, reverse curse technique on tap, domain restoration, insane tactical IQ that lets him watch Mahoraga for a few rotations and then cook a Gojo counter like he's speedrunning the meta. When it comes to raw power game design, Sukuna is the dev saying, "Yeah, this is as bad as it can get. This is the patch notes final boss." So could anyone beat that in a fair 1 versus 1? Probably not, and that's kind of the point. In a vacuum, with no story, no themes, just a white room and full HP bars, Sukuna is almost unbeatable. Gojo pushes him, Yuta and Yuki have win conditions, Hikari and Maki are scary, a coalition with perfect prep can maybe raid boss him, but the narrative keeps bending back to the same answer. The system, if you play it correctly, produces a monster that the system itself can't cleanly delete. But the point is, JJK isn't actually asking who has the higher power level. It's asking who is willing to pay what price to fight that. And that's where Yuji comes in. Yuji is not the stat check rival. He's the moral and thematic counter. He's the guy who will literally eat poison fingers, tank being bodied by Chozo, get mentally shredded by Sukuna, and still get back up because someone has to hold that weight. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out is what role Yuji actually fills. He's not Gojo, the untouchable genius. He's not Yuta, the broken special grade. He's the one who volunteers for the ugliest job, sharing a body with the king of curses, being the executioner and the prison at the same time, and then, later, learning soul-splitting punches and shrine just so he can personally end the thing that ruined his life. So when we ask, could anyone beat Sukuna, purely in combat terms, we're kind of missing the story's real win condition. Gege keeps framing the conflict around who can accept the cost of opposing him. Kenjaku runs from that responsibility. Old sorcerers tried and failed. Even Gojo, for all his greatness, still operates like a genius playing a game he enjoys. Yuji is the one who says, if it has to be me, I'll do it, and actually means it. Our awakened Yuji what if is basically just making explicit what the manga keeps implying. Yuji is the only one who can reach Sukuna where it actually matters, at the level of soul and meaning. Shrine, soul manipulation, all that is cool, but it's an extension of his willingness to become the exact kind of monster he hates, just long enough to kill the original. So yeah, in a vacuum, Sukuna wins the power game, but in the story JJK is telling, he was always meant to lose to the one person who truly understands the weight of his existence. And the crazy part is, once you see that, it changes what exactly happens when we drop Shinjuku Yuji back into Shibuya, because now we're not just changing stats, we're changing the entire narrative center of gravity. Rapid-fire matchup verdicts. Gojo, Yuta, Hikari, Yuki, Maki, Kenjaku, Yuji. So, to keep all of that in your head without needing a Sukuna-sized brain, let's do some rapid-fire matchup verdicts, because the thing that you need to understand is not just who's stronger, it's who actually has a win condition when it comes to this guy. First up, Gojo. In canon, he's obviously the closest we ever see to a fair 1-versus-1 challenger. 6 eyes, infinity, unlimited void, the whole I'm the GOAT starter pack. But the point is, by Shinjuku, Sukuna has literally farmed Mahoraga data, adapted to unlimited void's information overload, and walked in with a custom counter. In that specific, fully informed timeline, Gojo loses a fair fight. If you rewind and give Gojo an earlier run back, pre-Mahoraga notes, there's also definitely at least the possibility that he bodies Sukuna off a clean unlimited void before Sukuna knows what exactly happens inside that domain. Yuta next. Prep monster, copy machine, Rika behind him like a walking DLC pack. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here because people love glazing him. Yuta can absolutely make Sukuna work. He can stall. He can threaten with weird curse techniques. But he doesn't walk in with a single clean kill button against a fully informed Sukuna who's seen every domain trick in the book. Unless Yuta specifically hunts down Soul Hack's tools or replicates something like Yuji's soul damage, he's scary, not decisive. Hikari is the funniest one. Dude is a casino with hands. Jackpot immortality, stupid CE output, fights like he's speedrunning a Twitch highlight reel. But the first thing that we're going to need to figure out is, can he actually kill Sukuna? And the answer is, not reliably. What he can do is stall, burn time inside and outside his domain, and force Sukuna to reveal options, which is huge for a team fight. But he's basically signing up to be the guy who buys information at the cost of his own lifespan. Then you've got Yuki and the Maki/Toji archetype. These are your high-risk, high-reward assassins. In a perfect surprise scenario, Maki or Toji, with something like Playful Cloud or a specialized cursed tool, could literally one-shot Sukuna's body before he fully clocks them. Same way Toji embarrassed Dagon. Yuki with her mass manipulation and black hole tech could, in theory, just delete him. But in an open, square-up fight where Sukuna is ready, all of them are underdogs. He adapts. He dissects their gimmick. They get bodied. Kenjaku and Yuji are the weirdos. Kenjaku is not beating Sukuna in a straight fight, but as the planner, he's the one guy who might create the stage where someone else can. And Yuji, especially awakened Shinjuku Yuji, is the only person with a true, if suicidal, hard counterpath. Direct soul destruction. Who actually wins when the fist that breaks souls meets the King of Curses' soul? That's exactly why the title of this video is about dropping that version of Yuji into Shibuya. And in the next part, we're going to push that matchup to its absolute limit. Your turn. Who do you think has the best shot at the King of Curses? And now it's your turn, because the thing that you need to understand is that my matchup chart is not gospel. It's just one way to break down what exactly happens when people run at the King of Curses. So I want you guys to actually pick a side. Are you a solo Gojo believer? A Yuta prep time enjoyer? A Hikari jackpot truther? A Maki/Toji assassination fan? Or a Yuji hard counter theorist? Don't just drop a name and dip though, because that's boring and you're better than that. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out in the comments is your win condition. How does your guy or your squad actually get from Sukuna is laughing and glazing himself to Sukuna is on the floor, soul shattered or headless? Walk me through it like it's a turn-by-turn fight. What's the opener? What's the mid-fight adjustment? What's the finisher? If you're a solo Gojo believer, is it a clean, unlimited void diff before Sukuna ever adapts? Or do you think Gojo survives long enough to cycle domains and eventually run Sukuna out of options? If you're riding with Yuta, what exactly is the prep? Is it Rika plus copy techniques plus some cursed tool loadout that lets him force a domain trade and then snipe Sukuna's brain or soul while he's recovering with reverse curse technique? Hikari people, I know you're in here. For the sake of the video, I kinda downplayed pure gambling on infinite jackpot, but you guys can go crazy. Is it 4-minute immortality loops into domain bullying into eventually landing one lethal hit before Sukuna fully maps his domain rules? Or do you think there's also definitely at least the possibility that Hikari plus someone else in a tag team actually pushes Sukuna into a checkmate he can't adapt out of? Maki and Toji fans, I want to see the stealth kill PowerPoint in the comments. What's the exact cursed tool combo? What building they're hiding in? How they avoid cleave auto-adjusting to their durability? How they deal with Malevolent Shrine's fixed radius? Are we talking split-second decapitation the moment Sukuna is locked into a domain clash with someone else? Or some wild anti-domain cursed object that lets them ignore guaranteed hits for one swing? And Yuji Truthers, this is your lab. If you think awakened Shinjuku Yuji can actually crack Sukuna's soul for real, describe the sequence. Is it Black Flash into soul splitting into Shrine? Or does he bait Sukuna into overusing reverse curse technique until his soul is frayed enough for one final punch to delete him? On top of that, Throw me your weirder what-ifs. Kashimo with different conditions, like a full-body armor form that doesn't burn out in one volley. A different timing for Gojo where he fights a pre-Mahoraga Sukuna who hasn't seen Unlimited Void yet. Some cursed tool we barely saw in canon that suddenly becomes the hard counter to cleave and dismantle. I want the comments to basically be a JJK strategy lab. Be respectful, but poke holes in each other's logic, fix each other's win cons, upgrade someone's Gojo wins LOL into an actually detailed scriptable fight. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on my personal bracket later, but if I see a crazy good theory down there, I might build a whole video around it and shout you out. So, who are you putting in front of Sukuna, and how do they actually walk away? If you like this, you'll love these. Building your JJK power scaling playlist. So while you guys are cooking that perfect anti-Sukuna roster in your head, the thing that you need to understand is, you're already in the middle of a way bigger conversation on the channel. This video is kind of just one branch of what I like to think of as the Sukuna problem arc for us, where we keep poking at the same monster from different angles until the picture actually makes sense. If you're obsessed with why Yuji suddenly starts looking like a completely different character the moment he chains black flashes, you need to hit the black flash mentality breakdown next. Not just he hit the funny 2.5 times damage crit and packed someone up. I'm talking about what exactly happens in his brain, in his soul, and in the flow of cursed energy when he locks in. We go into why that Choso bathroom breakdown, that split-second rage, and that Shinjuku resolve all feel different, and why his awakening trigger isn't just emotional, it's mechanical. If this video made you ask, okay, but why does that one black flash matter so much? That's the one you queue up immediately. Then, for everyone who's still glazing Gojo or still salty about the result, we have the full Gojo versus Sukuna domain theory deep dive. That's where we slow way down and basically frame by frame what Malevolent Shrine and Unlimited Void are actually doing to each other. The first thing that we're going to need to figure out in that video is how Sukuna used Mahoraga's adaptation as a tutorial to literally patch his domain game, and how that one lesson is what lets him walk into Shinjuku with a hard counter to the GOAT. If you ever caught yourself saying, Gojo just loses because author said so, that breakdown will either fix that or at least show you exactly where the cope starts. And because there's also definitely at least the possibility that Yuji isn't anywhere near his ceiling yet, we've been cooking up a hypothetical Yuji's final form video too. For the sake of the video, we go full fan theory scientist on his soul technique, on how far soul-splitting punches could scale, on what happens if he refines Shrine into something uniquely his, and where his late series stats would actually land if he keeps eating experience the way he's been doing. If you've ever thought, what does peak Itadori look like if Sukuna never existed? That's exactly why the title of this video is Yuji's Final Form, and not just Strong Yuji compilation. All of these are bundled into the Sukuna Problem Arc playlist, so you can literally turn this into a binge session. Keep this tab open the playlist in a new one, and just queue up the Black Flash breakdown or the Gojo vs Sukuna domain theory while we're still talking. You're not starting a new topic, you're just continuing the same argument with new evidence. And don't go anywhere yet, because in the next part, we're going to flip the angle again and talk about how narrative rules, not just power rules, decide who's allowed to touch the King of Curses, closing the book on the King of Curses for now. So when we zoom out from all of that power scaling and matchup copium, the thing that you need to understand is that this whole video has basically been us trying to answer one deceptively simple question. What exactly happens when the King of Curses stops being a meme L machine and actually gets treated like the endgame raid boss he is? We started by reframing Sukuna's reputation, right? Early on, he's the guy who gets sealed inside a high schooler, clowned by Gojo, and only at a few fingers while getting bodied by Mahoraga's adaptation curve. But as we walk through Heian Hype, the Finger Bearers, Shibuya, the Mahoraga test run, then Gojo, then awakened Yuji and Megumi, it became really obvious that Shinjuku Sukuna is a totally different monster. We broke down the kit, cleave and dismantle that auto scale to durability, so you literally can't just tank him. Malevolent Shrine being barrierless and hitting a fixed radius, reverse curse technique on demand, domain restoration mid-fight, and the tactical IQ to use Mahoraga like a lab rat to prep for Gojo's unlimited void. And from there, the first thing that we're going to need to figure out was, who even has the right kind of tools to sit at that table? So we ran the gauntlet. Gojo, Yuta, Yuki, Kenjaku, Hikari, Maki, even cracked out coalitions with prep time. Every time, when it comes to straight canon conditions, no preloaded plot armor, Sukuna either wins outright or forces some disgusting trade where the win doesn't actually end him. The point is, canon Sukuna is almost unbeatable solo. There's also definitely at least the possibility of team kills or bizarre setups, but one-on-one, clean. He's basically the final exam Geigi never intended most characters to pass. That's exactly why the title of this video is about whether anyone could beat him, not who casually low diffs him on a Tuesday. For the sake of the video, we even cheated and dropped fully awakened Shinjuku Yuji back into Shibuya with Shrine, Soul Mastery, Black Flash consistency, Blood Hacks, Simple Domain, all of it, just to see if we could manufacture a real executioner. And even then, what did we find? Yuji only becomes a credible Sukuna killer under really specific what-if conditions, full kit unlocked, narrative timing shifted, and the story deciding, okay, it's your turn to be the hard counter. In straight canon, he's the seed of Sukuna's downfall, not the guy who solos him on day one. Because the thing is, JJK's answer to who can beat Sukuna is never just about raw AP and speed. It's power logic and narrative logic fused together. Theme, character arcs, the whole idea of cursed energy as regret and hatred. All of that is deciding who's allowed to actually touch the goat. So if you guys like this kind of alternate timeline lab work, where we bend the rules but still respect them, definitely hit subscribe, drop a like and stick around. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail in future videos about how the system itself picks winners and losers. And don't go anywhere, because the next big question is the reverse. In a world without Sukuna, who steps up and becomes the new King of Curses? And are we sure we'd actually prefer that timeline?